Hello, welcome and good evening ladies and gentlemen to another round of the UKSimRacing community's GT3 League Season 8 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. And tonight we mark the transition into the second round of the calendar, and see the second half I should say rather than the second round of the calendar, the second half when we move on to round 7 of 12. And tonight we are in Germany for the Oschersleben circuit, where our drivers will be heading to a circuit recently introduced to iRacing, and one which is an absolute challenge for our drivers, particularly in the GT3 racing class, because as we'll go on to see, this is a circuit which is all about fast flying and sequential corners where overtaking will come at a premium and difficulty could lie at the exit and entry into each and every corner as our drivers look to continue their championship campaigns with a brilliant way to kick off the second half of the season. But as we get ready to go racing, of course, this is a special broadcast in the fact that this is the first of our live broadcasts for Season 8 to the GT3 League, and what better venue to bring you all the racing action as we get underway shortly with an absolutely ram-packed schedule. But before we come to that schedule, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. Well, firstly, who am I? Well, I'm your host and commentator. My name is Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit to the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and all the racing action is being brought to you via the UKSimRacing YouTube channel. That is, if you go to youtube.co.uk or youtube.com and search for UKSimRacing, you'll be able to tune in there post-race as the broadcast is released, and it'll be available for your viewing. But all the racing action you see happening in the background today, and indeed the focus of our attention, is all live. It is happening as I speak, and therefore this is going to be completely raw. This is not a post-round broadcast, and everything that happens will be at the spur of the moment. Indeed, we'll be able to bring you therefore replays of the racing action as it occurs, and we'll be able to see exactly what goes on both on and off camera, whether it be live or we take a quick look back midway through all of the action. But as our drivers get ready to go racing once again, let's take you through the schedule so far and what lies in wait for our drivers as they make their way into the second half. As we can see on screen, we've cleared the left-hand side of the calendar, and now we make our way down the right-hand side of the calendar with our first sprint race of the second half of the season in round number 10 at Oschersleben today on the 30th of October, and in a week's time we'll be making our way from Germany to the United States of America via the Atlantic Ocean for the circuit of the Americas in round number 8 for another sprint race round. We'll then be making our way across the Pacific Ocean to Japan for Suzuka for round number 9, and that will be brought to you live as well on the 13th of November before we make our way back to European continent for the Ritz-Kurgan circuit for our third feature race round in round number 10, and that will be live as well, and that's going to be an absolutely brilliant one given the circuit is very favourable with drivers that are very new to iRacing as well, and that will definitely be an eye-opener on the 20th of November. Following that, for the penultimate round of the season, we have our final sprint race round, and that will be in the United States of America at the Indianapolis circuit on the 27th of November before we conclude on the 4th of December with the Red Bull Ring in round number 12, our final feature race round of the season as well. And what a venue to wrap things up. Indeed, a frequented venue, whether it be in GT3s, Formula 1 or classes in between. The Austrian circuit always proves to provide great racing action, and we do look forward to seeing the curtain come down there. But we've got a long way to go before that, and indeed, if we take a look back at the first half of the season, well, what a story it has been so far. We started off all the way back on the 18th of September with the Road America circuit in round number 1, and that circuit was an absolutely brilliant way to open up the season with a feature race to kick us off. And indeed, the Road America circuit seen many a driver come a cropper by pushing a bit too hard through the corners and sequences there, and also some falling shy with regards to the strategy. And indeed, many of you will recall the David Larson versus Matthew Whitefoot incident, whereby Larson looked to be leading and running away with the win in the silver class, only to have to come into the pit a lap before the end to take on the fuel, and that ceded the victory to Matthew Whitefoot, who planted it very well on strategy. But then we wound forward from the 18th of September to the 25th of September. We made our way to Japan for the Twin Ring Motegi circuit, indeed Honda's own circuit, produced in Honda's response to trying to improve their performance in IndyCar, and that was for round number 2 in our first sprint race round of the season. And at the Japanese circuit there, we saw plenty of racing action. Indeed, our silvers were the centre of the attention again at the start, with a good number of silver drivers, including Chris Edison qualifying high, but then ended up in the first lap incident into turns 1 and 2, falling down the order, and it really shook up the midfield. We saw plenty of action in the bronze class as well, and indeed in the gold class we saw a number of drivers out of form and position, and therefore points were heavily exchanged. Then we made our way back to the United States for the 2nd of October for the Road Atlanta circuit, the roller coaster ride of a road racing circuit. And in round number 3 there, we saw some very close-knit racing action in our gold and platinum classes, it all coming down to the wire in the sprint before we made our way from Brazelton in Georgia to Monterey County in California for Laguna Seca on the 9th of October. And there, at a circuit where it's difficult to overtake, we likened it, of course, to the American version of Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Laguna Seca did not disappoint with some major drama up and down the field, and particularly that drama being in the platinum class, where we saw many a driver have a spin at the corkscrew or other corners on the circuit, particularly at turn number 6 as well at the corkscrew. And there, it was the rise of the likes of Joe Zarkos who charged into the 4A. Then we went to Snetterton in the United Kingdom on the 16th of October, and at Snetterton circuit we saw the very tight infield layout, confusing and confounding a good number of drives with regards to absolutely nailing those corners time after time. Indeed, many a battle and many a late break into the latter half of the lap, and many drivers there really doing well, and some others once again find themselves come unstuck with regards to performance. And then last time out in round number 6 we had our second feature race round of the season at the Spanish circuit, the circuit to Barcelona, Catalunya, and on the 23rd of October we had an absolute joy of a race to watch in our hands. Indeed, all the races have been an absolute joy so far. I think Barcelona Catalunya resonates with me personally because there we saw plenty of battling action across the classes, but particularly in the gold class, where we saw many occasions where 2 or 3 wide coming through the opening sequences of corners at turns 1 through to 4, and also in the latter half of the lap we saw many a move being made down into turn number 10 at the hairpin, and also through the latter portion of the lap, drivers trying to set themselves up for the run to turn 1 on the next lap. And then we indeed did have a few heart-in-mouth moments. We saw drivers going side by side, and indeed a major championship momentum swing with regards to the gold class between Martin Tillin and Nathan Foster, where Martin Tillin came unstuck, whereas Nathan Foster was able to bring home some major points. But could we see that all change again today? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. But speaking of today, let's talk a little bit about our circuit, and it is the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben, located in Oschersleben in the Burda region of Germany. This circuit consisting of 14 corners, as you can see from the circuit map taken from iRacing.com. Thank you to iRacing for introducing such a brilliant circuit to the simulator. Indeed, thank you for this circuit map. This track with its 14 corners, you may have already noticed one key theme about it. It doesn't have too many straightaways. Indeed, this circuit is very heavily centered around its corner sequences, whereby the 14 corners really only start to spread out when you get into the latter third of the lap. So we're talking from turn 11 onwards. Well, that's where the lap opens up, whereas the first 10 corners all come in a hard and fast hitting sequence, start off the run to turn number 1 there, and you'll notice that we are running the smoother turn 1 to 2 transition. Indeed, there is an infamous quote which I'm not going to be repeating due to the fact it's quite a violent quote from John Cleland of VTCC fame, where he was making reference to the fact the original turn 1 sculpted here at the Oschersleben circuit was a sharp right-angled left-hander rather than the slightly smoother transition from turn 1 to 2 that you can see on the circuit map there. And whilst it is a smoother transition, it does offer a major overtaking opportunity, but of course the driver who attacks on the inside to turn number 1 will find themselves on the outside for turn number 2 at Hotel Corner. Making their way through the long right-hander at turn number 2, they'll then come towards the hairpin at turn number 3, albeit not quite a slow hairpin as such, more of an open, fast-flying hairpin of Hasseröder Corner at turn number 3, before making their way through what's known as the triple sequence of turns 4, 5 and 6, the triple left-hand sequence before coming into turn number 7. And again, you can see there turns 6 and 7 really mimicking turns 1 and 2 in terms of that layout, where we've got a left-hander followed by a right-hander, and that right-hander at turn number 7 will set our drivers up to run all the way through turns 8 and 9 up towards McDonald's Corner at turn number 10, and then they're on to the back straight. A short charge down towards Shell Curve at turn number 11, then to Aaron Curve at turn number 12, and it's the run into the Bow Curve at turn number 13 there. You can see this real opening up of the lap before they make their way into the Zeppelin Curve at turn number 14, and that's where the pit entry lies as well. And as our drivers make their way into the right-hander and emerge, they head onto the start-finish straight to go on to another lap. In terms of overtaking spots, turn 1, as we mentioned previously, there may also be some overtaking attempts made into the triple left-hander at turns 4, 5 and 6 if drivers are close and somebody makes an error out of turn number 3, but then it's the run down the back straight from turn 10 to 11, and also a potential charge into turn 13 if they're close enough. But otherwise, already you can see that overtakes here are going to come at a premium, and track position is going to be so key, and we'll see more of that in qualifying in terms of the layout of the circuit, and also drivers are really pushing to put the best possible time in, because because they know that if they can qualify well, they're likely to finish well, subject to no mistakes. But as we look from our circuit map then back to our live cameras here, let's bring up our schedule for tonight. And as we can see, we're currently in the pre-race program. In approximately 5 minutes time, we'll be heading into the qualifying session. 10 minutes of qualifying effectively there. 15 minutes available to our drivers, but we expect it to take only 10 minutes, given our drivers will have 3 fast laps available to them. In fact, I correct myself there, they have 4 fast laps available to them, plus 1 out lap, and then we'll be making our way to the grid for the purposes of the sprint race. 40 minutes of sprint race action from start to finish, with an all-important mandatory pit stop as well for a quick splash and dash of fuel. But that is going to be the schedule for round number 7 of the GT3 League Season 8, as brought to you by UKSimRacing. And what a circuit indeed, with an ambient temperature right now of 24 degrees centigrade and a track temperature building from 26 degrees centigrade currently. It's going to be a hot one, and expected that tyre degradation here is going to be a major factor in terms of staying on the circuit and keeping those point scoring hopes alive. But we'll have to wait and see who manages to keep their tyres cool, keep their cool under pressure, and who may fall by the wayside. Well, I can tell you one driver who's not likely to fall by the wayside, and he's in the back of your picture right now, and it is none other than Platinum Class leader and overall leader Jonathan Hitchen, as he makes his way on around here on a practice lap at the moment. Indeed, Hitchen has shown himself time and time again to be absolutely out there on pace. When he nails it, he does not seem to be touchable. And the only driver we have seen come close, indeed, put a card against Jonathan Hitchen has been Callum Reed-Garton, who, as I understand it, is not in attendance today. And we do have quite a depleted Platinum class here. Indeed, most of our classes are a little bit depleted. I think many a driver opting to use this round as a drop round for their sprint races for the simple reason it is going to be a huge challenge, and a lot of drivers not quite having perhaps the familiarity or the practice they may have with this circuit compared to other circuits on the calendar. But indeed, a newly introduced circuit is a bit of risk versus reward gamble, in the fact that if you do choose to race here tonight, you're going to be racing with a potentially depleted field, and there could be big points up on offer, but also have you been able to put the time in to get all those laps clocked in and therefore feel very comfortable. And indeed, Jonathan Hitchen feeling comfortable, he just seems to be right out there in the Porsche 911, and who can stop him. But it's not just about our Platinum leader, we also look to our gold drivers. Indeed, one of our gold stars here of Joshua Pratt, the privateer in the 88 machine, making his way down in the Porsche here, making his way through turns 10 and well, he made his way out of turn 10 much earlier, on turns 11 and 12 I should say, and heading down towards turn number 13 at the moment. And Pratt continues putting that good run of form, and indeed looking to take the fight to Tilling as he makes his way on around right now. And it is the gambit between Pratt and Tilling in the gold championship. I think I said Nathan Foster earlier, and I correct myself, Nathan Foster is a Platinum driver, but Pratt right now is leading ahead of what is Tilling, but it's still very close between them. And also they do have the big question mark over Alex Hill, who is looking to close them on down as well, and Hill of course picking up that win last time out in Spain. But as we also look to our silvers here, we see Colin Patterson, the Tiki Sport Tower driver, making his way through turn number 2 at this point in time, and looking at very nicely hooked up. And also the likes of Jeremy Grand as well, the golden Porsche driver here from BRM Racing, the American. What can he do tonight, given the fact that he's on a good run of momentum at the moment, and we'd be expecting he's going to be able to put in an even stronger performance here today. And also, what about our bronze drivers? The bronze army is back in full force, and well, Mark Johnson, one of the big 3 names up there in the championship stands. Johnson, Sharples and also Pays. And of course, the last time out we had a depleted bronze field. We only had 2 bronze drivers take to the circuit, but we've seen many more bronze drivers come here today, and who out of each of them will be able to score high? We would put the money on Mark Johnson, given the pace he's shown all season so far, and every time he's turned up he's walked away with a big result. Even if he's gone wrong at the start of the race, he's found a way to recover. But can he get off to a good start here today and kick off his second half of his championship campaign with a flying start? Well, he will have many a driver looking to usurp him in that regard, including Darren Sharples here in the Mercedes 777 machinery, the Britain. And also we do have Daniel Pays currently in the pit lane, and indeed you can see him there slightly off in the distance, the privateer, looking at ready to go in the BMW M4. But as he's absolutely itching to go, and we do wait to see who is going to be able to come out on top and what not. And we can also just say to you, if you are tuning in right now and you are thinking about how you can potentially give back to UKSimRacing, if you're enjoying the broadcast and you think to yourself, how can I just give a little something back without having to expend too much major effort? Indeed, we're not begging for anything or anything along those lines. So I think Nathan Foster will be begging that he'll get that corner right next time rather than going into the tyre back, because the team won't be happy with the fact they're going to have to fix that front bumper. Well, we can tell you there's an easy way to give back to UKSimRacing via our affiliate program. And to explain exactly what we mean by that, is that UKSimRacing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swelliomeda Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere, and Demon Tweets. And if you do head to our website, which you'll see on the screen as of now, and here is our website, the UKSimRacing.co.uk website today, there is a page where you can see our affiliates, and you can see it there in the top left corner, the button titled Discount Stroke Affiliate Links. And if you click on that button, you'll be taken to a screen much like this. It'll look like, and you can see the logos of all of our associated affiliates. And if you click on any of these logo images, you can make purchases through the web pages you are redirected to, which results in discounts for you and a kickback to us. And given that UKSimRacing is a non-profit organisation, all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, much like the GT3 League Season 8. And additionally, if you join our Discord, the UKSR Discord, the UKSimRacing Discord, some of our affiliates provide discount codes on there, and those codes are available for you to use. So remember, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UKSimRacing, and it's a little purchase which is of your personal interest, but the back end of it is it also helps us keep the wheels and the cogs turning at UKSimRacing. Means we can continue to build towards bigger and better things as we continue through 2022 and head into 2023. Goodness me, the fact it's going to be November in 2 days' time. The year has absolutely flown by, but I can tell you what also is flying on by. Our drivers right now getting set to go racing here with just under 15 seconds left in this final practice warm-up session. Indeed, our drivers have been ridden the right with regards to the pre-race drivers briefing. Many of our drivers in the pit lane for that, and some deciding to stay out on the circuits. We do see Mark Collicott there in the DCW Racing at BMW AM4, rolling his way on through it. The triple left-hander turns 4, 5, and 6. He comes through 6 and into 7 here, but the checker flag is out on this qualifying, not on this qualifying session, on this practice session, and we'll be heading into qualifying very shortly. And well, it will be closed qualifying, we should point out, so that means all of our drivers will have separate instances of the circuit available to them, so it's going to look a bit lonely for all of our drivers, but given how tight the circuit is and also the rule set we do run, that's why we do have a closed qualifying session. And each of our drivers will have a total of 15 minutes or 34 flying laps in which to put in their qualifying times, so we'll have to wait and see which ones happen first, but it's normally the 4 flying laps that do occur first. But our drivers are making the way on that, including here Alex Hill heading on now to the pit lane for Tiki Cinesport there in the Porsche 911. And as we said earlier, Alex Hill, last time a winner at the Barcelona-Catalunya circuit, so he's running on a run of form, and he'll be looking to see if he can continue that momentum as he goes deeper and deeper into tonight. But will he be able to? That's the big question. Of course, Tillin and Pratt will both have something to say about that. There's no doubt about it. But if we do know anything about Hill, he has been grinding that momentum. And also, we do see the returnee today of Brandon Hay. He's not been in attendance for the last couple of rounds, but a very fast gold class driver as well, as he makes his way on through turn number 7 there in the Mercedes, and the 96 driver here looking to hook things up nicely. Now, in terms of the expectations of cars, we do know that in general the balance of performance in the GT3 class at the moment is really placed in the Porsche at the top end of the balance of performance, but we are expecting this to be a handling car orientated circuit, so the Porsche will naturally go very strong here because of the sequence of cars and the weight change and weight transition of the car. But also we are expecting the likes of the Audi and also the Ferrari to do quite well here, less so perhaps the BMW M4 and the Mercedes AMG 2020 machine, the 2020 Evo to be precise. But speaking of that Mercedes, let's run it on board then with Brandon Hay as he takes us through the final corner and onto his first flying lap in this qualifying session, and we bring the dashboard up to give you an idea of his speed. He's making his way all the way down towards turn number 1 there, completely flat out towards the braking zone, and as he gets ready to go on in transition on the brakes, trail braking him down to fourth, down to second into turn number 2 he goes, lets the car creep away a little bit and then brings it back to corner apex before powering out and now making his way up towards turn number 3. Heading up through the gearbox into 4th gear, onto the brakes here for turn 3, down to 2nd gear, and as he makes his way on around, he gets on the power nice and early, using the camber on the road. The car goes a little bit wide there, but he carries on all the same and makes his way into the triple left at turns 4 through to 6, making his way through turn 4 into 5. There you can see having to lift off the throttle through 5, the car starting to understeer, and as he comes through turn number 7 now, the long right hander, much like turn number 2, through 2nd gear, and now back up through the gearbox he goes as he makes his way into turns 8 and 9 here, the quick sequence, and then into 10 here, and to bring the car and the momentum back down to earth as he exits 10 and now down the back straight towards 11. It's been hard hitting and very fast so far. In fact, he's brought the car onto limiter here. He's decided to back it on off, and I think there might have been a track limits invalidation there. If not, when he ran wide at turn number 3, then definitely perhaps at the chicane at turns 8 and 9. So Brandon Hay having to back the front off, and he'll go again shortly. But as he makes his way on through, we do have some drivers who are heading towards the end of their first fly laps, including Chris Edison. We had Tillin come across the line already and put a valid lap in, a 21.934. Campbell, goodness me, Austin William Campbell, I should say. I don't know why I've got the name of a politician stuck in my head, but that shows you how closely I follow British politics, and I do apologise to Austin William Campbell every time I get it wrong. But as we can see here, Chris Edison making his way into turn number 2 right now, going P6, and that is overall, of course, and not class respective positions here. Those are overall positions, and well, in terms of how you can tell who's a part of which class, you can see there on the left hand side in the time tell, those are the blue stripe against their name. They're in the platinum class. Those with the gold yellow stripe, they're in the gold class. Those with the silver grey stripe, they are in the silver class, and those with the brown bronze stripe, they're in the bronze class. But as they continue to push on through here, Mark Johnson putting in quite a strong opening lap in terms of going there with what was a 1:22.68, and that's putting quite nicely in amongst some of the silvers. He goes a bit wide there coming out to turn number 3 and gets himself set up once again very shortly as he makes his way on down and around here. We do look from the bronze Porsche driver to one of our other drivers heading on around right now, and that is the Ferrari driver, James Connolly, in the silver class as he comes on out of turn. Well, in fact, he's in the bronze class, I should say, and makes his way across the timeline, and we ride on board with the Ferrari driver here as he heads on down towards turn at number 1 and trying to complete an entire lap here on board with one of our drivers. As he comes into one, you can see that the car immediately wanting to creep away with some understeer there. If not into turn 1, then into turn 2 of braking. In fact, he backs off immediately there, deciding to start the lap over. And well, for James Connolly, not a good start to his qualifying session after going initially P15, but he's having to abort that lap, and that's going to cost him 1 lap in the overall proceedings as he makes his way on down. As he comes on down towards what is their turn at number 2 on the pit exit line, we do look from him to a driver who's just gone a little bit faster in the form of Martin Tillin, the gold driver, absolutely flying it. Only 3/10 of Jonathan Hitchen's provisional pole time so far, and we've got more times coming on in, including Stephen Masters, who is also really on point right now as he heads in towards turn 4 here, and as he comes on through, it will be the situation for him whereby he's looking good so far. And Stephen Masters, of course, the outright winner in the silver class last time out of Barcelona, Catalonia, absolutely flying at the Spanish circuit. And can he continue that run of form today? Well, so far the qualifying omens would say yes, he can, but of course it's only one part of the session is qualifying. The main part, the main course, which you've got to deal the dish on, is with regards to the race itself, but qualifying is going to be such a huge factor. And you can see through the camera angles we have available here just how tight the Oschersleben circuit is and why our drivers are so concerned about putting in that strong qualifying time. Speaking of strong qualifying time, Joshua Pratt has just moved up to P8 overall, P3 in class, in qualifying with what is there a 1:22.54. That just puts him a 10th ahead of Brandon Hay, although it is very close. And Brandon Hay will really trying to buck the trend, much like Martin Tillin, with regards to a car other than a Porsche being up there inside the top 10. Tillin in the BMW P4 and Hay in the Mercedes P9 as it stands, as James Acklam goes P2. Only 400ths of a Jonathan Hitchen, but as they come on around, we can also see making their way and progressing their way deep and down around on the circuit at the moment. We do have Casper Brockner here in the BMW M4. He's currently P15, and as he parks it up, he decides, right, he's going to reset to the pit lane. We do have Patrick Falconer coming on through, and as the Audi driver here makes his way on out, one of a limited number of Audi drivers in attendance in this series, and looking to try and do everything they can in order to have a strong start to the second half of their season. We do expect the Audi to be quite a smart car around here in terms of it should go quite well. It's got a lot of natural rotation in the car. Add to that, of course, that wonderful Audi V10 engine, and well, that engine, of course, being discontinued in the near future with the Audi R8 platform coming to the end of its overall lifespan in terms of production, but still they're going to give it their best, and there's no doubt about it as he makes his way on down towards turn number 11 here and coming into the quick right-left combination of 11-12. You see the car rolling nicely through, not too much body roll there for our driver, and as a result Falconer looking hooked up at this time as he now makes his way in towards turn number 14, coming down onto the brakes here, and as he exits the right-hander, will Falconer be able to have the lap he so desired, or will he have to go once again when he comes to the timeline? crosses the line and does not quite improve this time around, but he's still got plenty more opportunities. He's only put in so far 2 flying laps, and he's got more on the cards as he comes on down the round. But meanwhile, Jonathan Hitchen has gone even higher in the provisional pole stakes to a 21.396, 1.5 tenths clear of James Acklam as he comes to a parking point at turn number 2. Meanwhile, Colin Patterson coming on through, but looking a little bit further down and around on the field. We can see some of our other drivers right now who do feel, I think, need to improve a little bit, including Ryan Moles, who's yet to set a valid time, but he's coming to the timeline this time. Does he put a time on the board? No, he does not. So our Audi driver, our other gold class Audi driver, is yet to get a time on the board and looking to try and improve. But meanwhile, we do have in the pit lane, we're currently parked in the pit lane, I do believe, is Chris Eddersford, and I think we're going to be hearing from Chris Eddersford very shortly as he joins me in the interview room. Well, in fact, it doesn't seem as though we're able to actually quite bring Chris Eddersford into the interview room at the moment. Not quite sure what's happened there, but we are trying to fix a small technical issue because we were going to bring some interviews midway through the qualifying session. But if you give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. As we see they're parking up Mark Collicott, there's still half the qualifying session, or just under half the qualifying session to go. So our drivers do still have a bit of time remaining here as we do look to Casper Brotner heading on around, and if he makes his way on down and around in towards turn 11 and 12 here, he's got a lot of time still left on the cards, I think, if he's looking to improve. But as he makes his way up through the corners right now, we can see other drivers continue to try and improve as well. And well, Casper Brotner not improving on this lap so far as he comes out of what is the final corner there, heads to the timeline, and what's it going to be for him? Well, it's not an improvement overall. In fact, it is there as the time screen is updated. He improves there to P17 on 23.293, and he still does have one more lap available to him. We've still got some drivers out there, but one driver who has improved nicely is brought there into the wall, getting it wrong at turn number 2, is Martin Tillin, who's finished his qualifying session at the moment. And as Chris Edison joins us in the interview room at the moment, Chris, looks like you finished your qualifying times out there. P10 at the moment, provisional. How are you feeling about the qualifying session?
Not too bad, really. I would have liked to have done a 21, really, but I've messed up a couple of the laps. It's quite hot as well, actually. I think it's a couple of degrees higher than what I've used this week.
Indeed,
to practice.
So look at a very hot session out there at the moment, and with our drivers heading on around, track temperatures only going to rise. Given how challenging it is around here to overtake, thinking about being P2 at the moment, the only silver driver heading you is Stephen Masters. Is that the goal you wanted in terms of P2 in the group, or do you think you could have taken it to Stephen Masters?
No, Stephen's putting in a lot of time practicing at the minute. So if things stay as they are, then I'll quite be happy with P2. I think I'd like to be challenging, but just time at the moment, I'm afraid. Stephen's putting in, I think he's done a few officials this week as well.
Indeed, it looks as though Stephen's really on a run of form, but all the same, we do wish you the best of luck in the build-up to the race, Chris, and we look forward to seeing how you get on.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks for the interview.
Also, quickly join us in the interview room now, I believe, is bronze driver Reggie Greenfield. Reggie, not quite the qualifying session perhaps you wanted, down there in P23 overall, but a little bit ahead of Sean Clark still. Are you happy with the qualifying session, or was there a bit more to go?
It's been a long time since I raced this track, so and my lead up to this week, real life took over, so I found myself in Poland and Germany and all the way over to the UAE before I got back to my rig tonight, so was only able to put in probably about 20 or 25 laps before this.
Oh, goodness me, it sounds as though you've been all over the globe, like you say, and therefore having to settle yourself back down to get into the rig. Just take us through, what have you had to focus on tonight in order to be able to get yourself as best acquainted with the circuit in that limited time?
Well, I actually used to race when I first started PC racing. I was on Race Room with ESR, and we actually raced Oschersleben back then, so as soon as I got on the track, I was like, oh, okay, I remember this a bit. But obviously I haven't been able to put the time in, so I'll clean up the stragglers. I'll be back at the back there, and I'll kind of be the safety car, and yeah, I'll just see if I can't avoid being lapped, and if I do get lapped, I'll make sure I have that happen cleanly.
Well, we look forward to seeing what you can do from the back of the field, Reggie. Best of luck to you. Keep it safe, as you say.
All right, thanks, man.
So hearing there from both Chris Edison and also Reggie Greenfield, both of their perspectives on the run through qualifying and going into tonight. And interesting, the two different perspectives in the fact that Chris Edison very heavily focused on trying to deliver to a particular lap time and it not quite working out for him. Whereas with Reggie Greenfield there saying about the fact he has not had too much time to turn the wheel and therefore it's been more of a focus on what he's been able to do in the time permitted. And as he says there, trying to be from the back, pick up the stragglers, be the safety car and driving safe and keeping it safe. But we do see there Joshua Pratt parked on up and getting ready to go. He might be going back out there, but I think we do have time very quickly for one more interviewee in the form of what is there right with. I think it's going to be Martin Tillin just quickly. And as he joins me in the interview room, Martin, qualifying has gone quite strong for yourself, P6 overall, but I think more importantly, pole position in the gold class, unless Joshua Pratt has an answer to it, but he seems just to be parked up in the pits at the moment.
Yeah, it was. I changed my strategy this week, and I did 2 fast laps and then reset and did a third, rather than the other way around this week. So it was good. I like this track. It's very fun to drive, and if you get a good lap in, it can really pay dividends in the end.
Oh, indeed, and you put an absolutely solid lap in. Now we do wait for the transition over to the grid for the purposes of the race. So just a quick word from yourself. What's going to be the strategy here today?
Just keep it clean, keep it on track. Just be aware of surroundings. It's a very tricky pit exit. Try not to kill it or bin it. One dip off track and you could be dead. So you've got to be very, very careful on exits. So it's a tricky old fight round here. It's very tricky to pass, and you've got to have the guts to do it. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, we wish you all the best luck, Martin. Of course, having to turn things around from a difficult day in Spain last time out. But if anybody can do it, you can. All the best as you take to the grid.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate the chat.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, we've just had a quick interview with some of our drivers who are going to be taking part as of the race. And indeed, there you heard also from Martin Tillin, I think very happy with his performance in this qualifying session and now all set to go for the purposes of the race. But we're just ticking down the clock now, only 10 seconds before we transition out of qualifying and to the grid, but nobody else turning any laps at the moment out of our 24 drivers in attendance today. The checker flag is now out on this qualifying session and we get ready to make our way to the grid. And as we transition on over, let's take you through the grid as they line up for round number 7. So after qualifying, this is how our drivers have placed. It's Jonathan Hitchen who took pole position overall and in the Platinum class in the end on a 121.396 for Symphony Esports White. Joining him on that front row is fellow Platinum peer from BRM Racing, James Ackland P2. Damien Lovett P3 starts off our second row with Austin William Campbell P4. And then we have Nathan Foster P5 from SimRacing Racing with Martin Tillin, our gold pole sitter for UKSR Pink P6. Stephen Masters, the silver pole sitter P7, a great qualifying lap from him to be 6/10 off a pole. With Alex Hill alongside for Tiki Simsport, and then we have on row number 5 the combination of Joshua Pratt and Chris Edison there, and of course him from Chris Edison, he'll be looking to try and take the fight to Stephen Masters, there's no doubt about that. Outside the top 10, we start off with Mark Johnson P11 on our 6th row, and he at the privateer, our bronze pole sitter, congratulations to him, carrying on from where he left off last time out. He has Brandon Hay in P12. Then we have behind the bronze gold pair, the combination of silver and gold of Mark Collicott from DCW Racing and Ryan Moles from BWT Motorsport. Those two go together P13, P14. Then, much like on the row number 8, we have the silver driver Colin Patterson and the gold driver Stuart Brown, the Tiki Simsport tyre driver, just out qualifying Brown from Symphony Esports Gold. Then we have Patrick Falconer behind it, starting off row number 9, joined by Casper Brotner in P18. And a little bit further back as our drivers look to get underway shortly, we do have the pairing of Darren Sharples and Daniel Pace, the two bronze drivers P19, P20 on row at number 10. And it's Jeremy Grant and James Connolly P21, P22 with Reggie Greenfield and Sean Clark making up our final row P23 and P24. And as we heard from Reggie Greenfield only moments ago, looking to start it safe in the back of the field and make up the positions by keeping it smart and consistent. But all of our drivers are set, the gridding process is complete, and we now look down to our drivers here as the safety car will pull off shortly, and it will be Jonathan Hitchen who leads the field round behind the safety car, for the formation lap. And when they come to turn number 14 next time around, we will be going green at the pace set by Jonathan Hitchen himself as they make the way underway. But as we've already seen from the qualifying laps they did from the circuit map, and also just that gut feeling from our drivers in those pre-race interviews, the feeling has been that qualifying's been important, and now can they convert a good qualifying session or turn around a bad qualifying session into a strong race result, where it's going to be a major challenge. There's no doubt about it. And well, one driver here who finds himself right in the thick of it, Ryan Moles, the BWT Motorsport driver, who we did try to potentially grab some time with in the run out of qualifying, but of course we only had a limited amount of time. But we do wish him, and indeed all of our drivers, all the best of luck as they get ready to go racing here. And well, it's only going to be 40 minutes, but it will feel as though it's a lot longer given how tricky this circuit will be. But at the same time, as you look a bit further down the field there, perhaps while the biggest surprise is in the bronze group, Mark Johnson being quite far ahead of his bronze peers perhaps is not a surprise given the pace we've seen so far. But the surprise being Daniel Pay's not quite able to take P2, being pipped to the post by Darren Sharples, and it's going to be very close between these two in terms of who can hold on to that P2 position and really pick up the momentum early. And given the fact they're both in cars which may feel a little bit gritty to drive around the circuit in terms of they may not want to tuck into the corners as much, given they're both front engine rear wheel drive machines, whether it is Sharples of course in with the Mercedes there, he's going very slowly, and I wonder if Sharples is falling out of position. With that, he's just backing off there. I think he's trying to get some tyre temperature on into the car, and well, he's allowed to back off to a degree, but he can't fall within too much of a distance away from the driver in front under this formation. Otherwise he will receive a penalty for it, and that's something he's got to be worried about there. But as we look a little bit further up the field, Nathan Foster P6 in the end on that third row. Well, in fact, I believe it was P5 with Tilling alongside him, P6. I should correct myself there. But the SimRacing driver turning things around quite nicely at Barcelona. Can he continue that run today? He's had a rotten run of form over the course of the first half of the season, a lot of it being bad luck rather than detrimental to his own performance. But as he makes his way on down the back straight here, can he have a strong result? Can he get onto the podium? And with Damien Lobbit here today, looking to go strong for Symphony Esports, White Lobbit has not been in attendance for the last couple of rounds. You can imagine he'll be looking to do his utmost as well. But can anybody take the fight to Jonathan Hitchen, who right now is backed off on the safety car, and we wait for him to take us to the green. He comes out the final corner, he plants it and goes. Jonathan Hitchen takes us for 40 minutes of racing here at the Oschersleben Motorsport Arena and gets off to an absolutely flying start. But look at this further back. Ackland versus Lobbit into turn one they go, side by side under braking, and I think Lobbit's going to have the run here under brake. Oh, goodness me! And coming in hot is James Ackland, they're coming in hot. And now Austin William Campbell comes on for up the inside of turn number two and picks up the places to the detriment of the Platinum peers around him. But meanwhile, Martin Tilling going on the offensive here versus Nathan Foster, but Foster covers him off well as they make the way through turn number three. And a bit further back, we have seen a bit of a shake-up here. Brandon Hay gaining 2 places at the start as Alex Hill goes wide there, and that's a big one in the gold class for Hill to go wide early on. And Brandon Hay gaining places here, and Hill is not done yet, so we've got a car side, and that's Mark Johnson off circuit there. And we've also got Ryan Moles going for a run into the gravel coming out to turn number 5. 2 cars on cold tyres getting it wrong at the triple left, and as they make the way back up to speed, it's drama on lap number 1 here, Oschersleben. As meanwhile, we look back to Brandon Hay here, who's not quite done hunting Chris Eddersford, as they make the way out to turn number 10 and down towards 11. As they charge their way on down towards the aforementioned chicane of 11 and 12. You can see here Brandon Hay right now really trying to put that pressure on. He wants to go hunting after Joshua Pratt, who's had a great start as well. As they come into turn number 13, I don't mean he's quite got the momentum at the moment. He's going to have to wait a little bit later on, but a bit further back there you can see Patrick Falconer. Oh, goodness me, and you can also see behind Patrick Falconer Stuart Brown going off sideways out at turn number 13, and the Symphony Esports Gold driver recovers the car to the circuit. He has to rejoin on the outside of 14, but that was a very hairy moment as he makes his way out of the final corner. But after one lap, it is Jonathan Hitchen who leads by a margin of 1.5 seconds versus Austin William Campbell in P2. Then we have James Ackland P3, followed by Nathan Foster P4. They're all platinum drivers. Then your first gold driver, through. Martin Till in P5, then Stephen Masters in P6, your silver leader, followed by Joshua Pratt P7, and then we do have Chris Edison P8, followed by Brandon Hay P9, and then completing the top 10 is Alex Hill in the gold class. Best of the rest starts off with a Mark Collicott in P11. Collicott gaining 2 places at the start of the race, overall not in his class however. Then Colin Patterson P12, followed by Patrick Falconer P13, Casper Brotner P14, Daniel Page your bronze leader after Mark Johnson's moment at the triple left, only a lap ago. Daniel Page leading the bronze class from P15, Darren Sharp was hot on his heels P16, and then we have James Conley P17, Reggie Greenfield P18, and then it is Stuart Brown P19, and Damien Lovitt completes the top 20 as they make their way around on this second lap. But things have calmed down relatively so far, as meanwhile a bit further back Mark Johnson here trying to make the move versus Sean Clark on the inside into 8. He gets it done there. I don't think Clark trying to offer too much of resistance, as it was one of those situations I think whereby Clark noticed that Johnson would be coming back on through after that instant and therefore did not want to have to battle and lose time versus Johnson. But meanwhile Clark also now has Jeremy Grant trying to make a move up into turn number 11, and Grant there later on the brakes gets it done versus Clark and moves up into P23. Sean Clark down to P24. But as our drivers come through here, we do have a side-by-side between Damien Lovitt and Stuart Brown. Now what on earth happened to Damien Lovitt earlier on? Well, we can tell you what happened earlier on to Damien Lovitt, and we are going to take a look back at it very shortly. And that was the instant at the very start of the race when we went green, and here it is. And this was in the run into what was turn number 2, and contact there with what was the car of James Ackland, sending Lovitt on around, and very unfortunate, but he now returns to the circuit after he had to wait for the entire field to come on through before he could return, and he's having to make a recovery drive as we return to the live pictures. But as we do return to aforementioned pictures, we can see our drivers continue to press on here. Patrick Falconer right now has got a huge pressure from Casper Brotner behind, and Brotner taps him on the rear there, and the DCW Racing driver looked absolutely firmly planted to the ground. No way losing control there whatsoever, and I think he'll be grateful for that as they make the way on through, in the fact that nothing went wrong there. And now Patrick Falconer holds on for the time being, but that looked very close to curtains as he makes his way on down towards turn number 11 here. And now Falconer will be thinking to himself, right, I've been given the hurry up code from Casper Brotner, which is you need to go faster because I'm going to be tapping the rear end. And of course he won't be open, that Brotner keeps tapping him there because they don't be going to the steward's room, and also that's not the way he drives as they make the way out of 13. I don't think Brotner meant anything by it, to be fair, but I think he's got the pressure of the bronze drivers behind him. As meanwhile Ryan Miles, I believe Ryan Miles has just lost another position. In fact, he's gained another position, I believe, over Greenfield there as they come through turn number 14 once again. But as they come charging on through, we do take a look at what happened to the likes of our drivers who went off, such as Mark Johnson at turn number 4. And well, here you go. This is what happened to Ryan Miles and Mark Johnson in quick succession at turn 4 in the opening lap. So making their way into the triple left here, Ryan Miles. In fact, was there a bit of contact there between Johnson and Ryan Miles? It looked as though the two of them may have just had a brief bit of contact between them. We do take another look back at this contact on board here and coming into the corner. I think there was a tap, and then Miles, unsettled by the tap and also the speed he was carrying into the corner, the car snapped to him. That was very unfortunate for the pair of them. But as we now return to the live pictures here, we can see Ryan Miles, well, whatever's happened's done and dusted now. If it's going to go to the steward, so be it. But as they make their way back up to speed, both drivers having to focus on what they can now do. We have heard that Stuart Brown's also had an off-track Mercedes driver, but in the live pictures, we should focus on what's happening live right now in terms of Brandon Hay versus Alex Hill, and also trying to come through with it is Collicott here. Collicott in the DCW Racing BMW on the outside, the bright yellow machine, you can't miss it. And as they make their way down towards turn number 14 here, Collicott backs out for now, but looking to go on the offensive. They make their way through turn number 14 and on to another lap here, but it's all kicking off between them, and Hill and Hay showing you can go side by side, as meanwhile Brandon Hay still battling with Hill down into turn number 1 here, and Brandon Hay in the end just cuts across there, knowing that Hill's going to back out for the simple reason if Hill doesn't back out, the two of them are going to lose a huge amount of time versus Edison in front, and therefore Pratt in particular losing P2 in the gold class. But as they make the way up towards turn number 3 now, you can see that whilst our drivers may be in linear in formation, by no means are they settling down for those positions here. It's all knives out racing here in terms of wanting to gain places, because they haven't got much time. We've already cleared 6 minutes of 40, we're already in 8 for the way, and the time is ticking down as our drivers continue to press around here at the German circuit. But as they roll their way on through here, we look from this battle for P9 overall to a bit further back. This is a battle for P3 in the gold class, keep in mind, and it's the battle meanwhile for P6 in the gold class, albeit P19 overall, between Brown and the driver behind him and Moles. They come through turn number 7. Now they do have James Connolly in front of him, and Connolly of course the Ferrari bronze driver here, and Connolly would love to pick up that P3 in the bronze class. He's got Reggie Greenfield and Mark Johnson a bit further back, but Mark Johnson is closing very rapidly. Meanwhile, you can see here Connolly, I think, just stay on the outside line here in respect to the fact that Brown was going to try and come through eventually, but meanwhile Johnson out the inside of Greenfield into turn number 11, and as they make the way on through, Johnson there gets it done. I think Greenfield, much like we saw earlier on from Sean Clark, knowing that Mark Johnson's got so much pace at his fingertips, decide not to fight it and playing the conservative approach as they make the way out of 13 down towards 14. As they come into the right hand here, Johnson goes a little bit deep, a bit of dirty out of the back of Connolly's car, but Connolly a bit unsettled coming out the corner. Johnson is going to get a huge run coming out to turn number 14 down towards 1. I don't think Connolly can defend this as they make the way on down. If he is, he's going to try and hope that he can keep it on the inside for 2, but in the end Johnson sweeps on through and Connolly backs out there, and I think Connolly a bit unsettled by what happened at 14, deciding to play it safe, and well, one driver who is playing it safe is Reggie Greenfield behind, and Greenfield right now will be looking at this and thinking, I can pick up a P4 in the bronze class if I put my mind to it, as they make the way in towards turn number 3, and as they come through the left-hander here, you can see Greenfield closing little by little as they make the way out of the corner and down towards turn 4 through to 6 once more, but as they make the way into the triple left here, we see a little bit further up the road, Daniel Pay's bronze leader, he's still got Darren Sharples behind him, and as they make the way on through the chicane here, we ride on board with Darren Sharples in the Mercedes AMG as they come out of the corner. You can see there, Pay's getting a much better run out the corner, and I think for the simple reason that right now Sharples is in an absolutely huge waft of dirty air for that BMW in front, and it's not helping the front end of that car settle through the corners, and they make the way through 12 and up towards 13 here, one of the closest battles on the circuit right now, and they make the way under braking into 13. You can see here Sharples just not able to gain enough ground to try and force the issue as they come through the right hander of 14 and make the way on through to the next lap, but at the same time Pace is definitely cognizant of the fact that Sharples is there. Damien Lovett is just behind, you can see him on the television camera inside the car, that's the rear view mirror effectively for Sharples. In the absence of being able to look up and above him, he looks down and onto the monitor, and as they make the way into the corner, you can see Lovett they're going a bit wide into turn 2 to give himself a late apex cutback, and Sharples a bit of snap oversteer there on corner exit, and again just not comfortable running behind Pace right now, and as a result the car not quite hooked up. But as we look to the exterior cameras, Lovett trying to get the signal through here, I'm coming through, and as they make the way through turn number 3 and up towards 4, I wonder if Sharples may give them the space coming out of 7 to go on through and perhaps disrupt the running pace of Pace as they make the way into the triple left. As they come out now through turn number 5 and into 6 and now to 7, Sharples holding on for now, and I think also thinking about the bigger game. Speaking of holding on, Reggie Greenfield right now staying right behind his rival Connolly here as they make the way into turn number 7, but again finding a wall of dirty air. But meanwhile, speaking of finding places, it's Hill versus Collicott. Collicott on the inside, and Mark Collicott's going for it here into the chicane of 11 and 12, and as they come through, Collicott gets it done. My goodness, that is brave stuff from Collicott, but great respectful racing between the pair as well, and we had to rely on the Hill showing him the space, and indeed they gave one another just enough space and they made it work, and Collicott gains a place here, and I don't know what he's had for breakfast this morning, the DCW racing driver, but whatever it is, I hope he continues to have it, because right now he is absolutely loving the car by the looks of things. He makes his way into turn number 2, and he's put himself a gold driver between himself and Colin Patterson, who right now will be chasing him for that final podium position in the silver class, because Collicott's P3 in class, P10 overall, Patterson P4, P12 overall, as they make the way up into turn number 3 once more. As they come running through the right hander and head on down towards turn at number 4 through to 6, I think Hill will be thinking about, okay, given this has happened, what can I now do to remedy this? Because I don't think he'll be too pleased that he does have a silver driver between himself and Brandon Hay, the next gold driver up the road. As they make the way into turn number 7 and beyond the apex now, we can see just a little bit further up the road, Stephen Masters here under pressure from Joshua Pratt. Now Masters, your silver leader, of course, making his way downhill. We think there's not too much pressure on him, given that Pratt is in a different class to him, but at the same time Edison quite close behind in terms of it's only 5 seconds to Edison, so if these two do battle hard, then Edison will close up very rapidly indeed. So I think Masters here has to be tactical about this. Does he go for overall position, because of course he will be playing for overall points as well as class points, or does he decide to lose some overall points and just focus on the lead of the class? well, he's going to have to think about that one. Speaking of thinking about things, I think Sharples and Lobbit have both thought about their relative positions, because Lobbit has come through into turn number 13 and through 14. He's confirmed the place, and meanwhile, as soon as we cut away, we now look back to Pratt versus Masters here, and Pratt gets ahead of Masters coming out of turn number 2, but Masters goes in hot into 3. It's very close between the two of them, and as they come out of the corner, Pratt has to give Masters the space, but I think Pratt's got it done, and in doing so moves up to P6, and now firmly within his sights is his main championship rival of Martin Tinning, who leads in the gold class P5 overall. But let's take a look back at that move. This was only moments ago. They made the way into 2. In fact, Masters made an error there. He went overly deep into the corner, got the car stopped, and well, it was not a move that came immediately from Pratt. Instead, he capitalised on the situation, and as they made their way into turn number 3, you could see Masters tried to come back. He tried to make sure the door was open, and indeed Pratt gave him the room, but Pratt also believed in the camber of the road surface and the preload differential of his car. We could get the power down, rotate the car into the corner, and got it done. Mission complete, and now we return back to live pictures here, and as they make the way in towards turn number, what is their 14 once again, coming to the end of what for him is number 9 of the laps turned, and they've got plenty more laps to go, there's no doubt about it. We look from battling inside the top 10 to a little bit further down, in particular to Alex Hill here, and Hill into the pit, and Hill was coming early, and this is, I think, a reaction stop to the trouble he was having behind Kolokot. In fact, he was caught up behind the silver driver, and he can't afford to lose any time, so Hill has gone for a huge undercut here, and it's not often we see an undercut of this caliber being attempted, but if anybody can do it, the TG Simsport driver is going to try and prove he can do it as he makes his way into the pits and takes a quick stop. Meanwhile, we look from him to other drives much further up the order, and this is Austin William Campbell, the privateer, running the 555 car. In fact, I believe running for Symphony Esports there. We'll have to get that rectified in preparation for the next broadcast. I believe he is actually representing Symphony Esports here, but as he makes his way through turns 8, 9 and up into 10, it does look as though right now Austin William Campbell has the pressure of James Ackland behind him as they make the way in towards 11 and 12, and as they head into the braking zone, we can see Ackland staying with him. But of course, one thing we have seen, particularly our Platinum drivers do, season in and season out so far, is when they're close to one another, running in the tow, they'll use lift and coast and a bit of slipstream on the straights in order to help them save fuel. But the problem is for Ackland, can he afford to do so with Nathan Foster, the Simam Racing driver, not too far behind and closing gradually as they make the way out of turn number 14. Now, my gut instinct would say that Nathan Foster right now will be trying to close on up. He's not quite on the same pace of Austin William Campbell or James Acklam at the moment. He's a couple of attempts off, but I believe that once William Campbell has to worry about Acklam a bit more, then we may see the impetus shift there, and Nathan Foster may be able to close on up. Jonathan Hitchen, meanwhile, your race leader, well, to give you an idea, here he is coming out of turn number 3 and down towards 4 already. He is 6 seconds clear of the field as he presses on through into the triple left of 4, 5 and 6, and absolutely flying right now. But meanwhile, as he heads into turn number 7, I can tell you that Daniel Page has managed to find his way past Casper Brotner. And how did this happen? Well, we've got a car off track at the moment. We'll have to come back to that fault shortly. And Ryan Moles here trying to capitalise on Stuart Brown, going off at turn number 2. Into 3 they go. Moles is on the inside, and as they emerge from the corner, it's still side by side. The BWT Motorsport Audi's going to have the momentum here. Under braking, they go into the triple left, and Brown there being edged out slightly, but Moles takes a huge amount of apex curve at turn number 5, but he survives it, and as they make the way out of the corner, Ryan Moles moves up to P5 in the gold class, P17 overall, as they make the way in towards turns 8 and 9. But we're also hearing, whilst that's been happening, Reggie Greenfield's been involved in an instant. We take a look back at what's happened. Well, this was only moments ago, focusing on the TG Simsport BMW M4 here as it came into turn number 3. Hot on the brakes. Oh, goodness me, and that is contact there with, I do believe, James Conley. I think Greenfield coming in a little bit too hot on the brakes, and as a result, they're connecting with James Conley. They both return to the tarmac, and, well, I think James Conley will not be too happy about that one. It's unfortunate, and we return to live pictures now, and I think James Conley has had to jump to the pitch due to the damage sustained, and therefore he is going to be repair work, and he'll be at a lap down effectively. That may be an early retirement, unfortunately for Conley. But meanwhile, focusing back on their here and now, well, Ryan Moles has had a taste of one move, and now he wants a taste of another as he goes after Darren Sharples, albeit it's not a battle within class, it's a battle across classes. It's more of an overall position for P16, which Sharples holds on to at the moment. But as they make their way down to turn number 3, you can see here that Sharples right now just minding his own race, and I think for Sharples, what he's got to be worried about here is if he can't keep Moles behind him, look who's closing up. 2 gold drivers separate the pair, but at the end of the stick here is Mark Johnson as they make the way through turn 5 and into 6, and right now Johnson absolutely pushing hard to recover the ground he lost after that contact with, we believe it was contact, we can't confirm it for certain, but the incident at turns 4 and 5 on the opening lap, which saw himself and Ryan Moles both go off circuit on the outside. But as they make the way up to speed, head down the back straight. Well, Moles here looking up the inside versus Sharples into 11. Can he get it done on the brakes? He's going to be brave here, and Sharples gives him the space, and Moles comes on through and gains another place and continues to charge on here. He knows that the car's hooked up. That Audi is absolutely on point. And as they make the way into turn number 14 right now, well, Ryan Moles, who's his next target, is Casper Brotner. His next actual class target is fellow Audi driver Patrick Falconer. And to give you an idea, here is Falconer making his way into turns 1 and 2 as he comes onto the brakes and comes on through and makes his way all the way out towards turn number 3 once again very shortly. But coming on out at this point, Falconer doing everything he can in order to try and gain places. Mark Johnson, meanwhile, looking to try and make a move here on Brown, and that's a bit of an odd place to try and go for it right on the curve and get turn number 2. But I think Brown may have gone a little bit deep, and Johnson trying to capitalise a bit here and find himself 2 wheels high on the apex curve. Then that's not where you want to go. I think Mark Johnson still really just showing the amount of intent in terms of wanting to come on through, and he's just not able to find the space. As we hear Conley is back out onto circuit, he's leaving the pits at the moment, albeit he will be a lap down on the field now, if not more, given what's happened. Unfortunate for Conley, but glad to hear they're able to get that Ferrari back out on circuit to get some points on the board, should it be able to complete over half the race distance. But meanwhile, whilst all of this has been happening further on down the order, we do look up to Patrick Falconer here, the Audi driver from DCW Racers. Jonathan Hitchen sets a new fastest lap of the race at 21.903. My goodness, that is 3/10 faster than what anybody else has been able to achieve over race distance so far. And Falconer has the pressure of Damien Lobbit behind, and Lobbit really trying to put that pressure on to come on through here. And of course, Damien Lobbit qualifying right up on the front couple of rows, and there was an incident on turn at number 2 on the open lap between himself and Ackland, which saw him drop all the way down the field. He's going to look up the inside here, and we can see Falconer completely backing off the throttle there, just a yield. And when we say completely backing off, it doesn't look like much. He's lifted off enough just to be able to make the corner with Lobbit ahead, but at the same time not lose too much momentum, and now making the way out of 2 and up towards 3. We can see a little bit further back that Mark Johnson still trying to find his way past Brown, getting closer and closer, but just not able to make the final 5% count. But a little bit up the road from these guys, we can tell you that Casper Brotner right now, it caught between a rock and a hard place in the fact that he has Ryan Moles right behind him, as in fact we ride on board here with Ryan Moles, who tries to pick his way past Brotner and pays into turn 6 and 7. He gets very close, but goodness me, that makes me stand on a end in terms of the hairs on the back of my neck. I don't know about you guys and girls at home watching on the TV, but I can tell you as they make their way into turns 8 and 9, your Ryan Moles right now absolutely pushing hard here, and as they make their way out to turn number 10 and down towards 11, trying to stay as close as possible into the braking zone they go shortly. And well, can he try and find the move here? I don't think so. I think there's just enough of an overspeed for Brotner with regards to the BMW M4 straight line speed advantage, plus also the toe of pace in front. Although I say that he looks up the inside there, goodness me, Brotner actually making me speechless for a brief moment and going up the inside, pace going a bit deep, but Brotner, they're just seeing the space and deciding to go absolutely all for it. And now Ryan Moles is going to try and drag race his way on past here as they make the way on down the start finish straight down towards turn number 1, and into the corner they go, and on the inside he makes the move. Can he get it stick? He does, he gets it to stick, although he goes a bit deep as Ryan Moles, but he brings the car on back, and that Audi there just showing how much rotation it's got in the retardation on the brakes as well, making it count. And Ryan Moles moves past Daniel Page, and for Page now this is becoming an even more pressing situation, because the number 8 driver once again has Darren Sharples win a second of him, and it's the case that there's neither driver between them, and therefore Sharples has got a clear run on his rival for the lead of the bronze class. But as they make the way down through turns 5 and into 6 and 7 they go. Mark Johnson not too far back either, though he's fallen off the back, interestingly enough, of Stuart Brown over the last couple of laps. I think he's backed off, but meanwhile, speaking of backing off, well, there's no signs of backing off here between Pratt and Tilling, as Tilling's into the pits and Pratt gets on through, but Tilling decides, right, I'm going to go into the pits here and undercut you and make it now, so you have to push even more as they make the way on around to another lap. But Tilling here, I think, has called it right, and the question is, does he come out in the right position and get himself some clear air? But we will just take a look back at what exactly was happening only moments ago between the two of them before we did see Tilling peel his way in to the pit lane. Well, this was moments ago, and as they came through turn number 12, Tilling went a bit deep there onto the gravel, but Pratt was forced to go all the way around the outside into 13. And interesting enough, you'll see here, I think Tilling may have had it on the cards of be thinking about coming into the pits, but in the end, he did a switchback and he made it work. But meanwhile, as we return to live pictures now, Ryan Moles versus Casper Brotner here in the battle for P13, and Moles has just found his way on through on the live pictures, as we do see there Connolly going very slowly round turn number 2 due to blue flags and trying to stay clear of everyone, as we hear that Alex Hill has just found his way past Reggie Greenfield further down the order in the battle for P21, but Moles has now got ahead of Casper Brotner. And how did that happen? Well, we're about to see. As they're making their way down towards turn number 1 here, Moles up the inside, but Brotner, to be fair, I think Brotner was caught a little bit shy by that and tried to hang on the inside, and Moles in the end once again finding so much confidence on that outside line of 2 and going deep into the corner. And well, nobody's been really able to find that grip compared to Moles in the gold class, and he's making it work time and time again. But as we return to the live pitches now, 18 minutes still left on the clock plus the final lap. We are seeing a couple of pit stops, not too many. The big question mark, of course, is Martin Tilling. What can he do with this undercut, this midpoint undercut? And we have seen so far he's come out in P19, but the key and crucial thing for him is he's come out in clear air. He's got no traffic ahead of him other than James Connolly, who is 2.8 seconds up the road. But the differential here is that Connolly is a lap down as Tilling comes in again. Well, I don't know what's gone wrong in the pits, but for Tilling, I think it's gone all manner of wrong. I wonder if this is a drive-through penalty, perhaps, for track limits, although we haven't had any indication of that. But Tilling comes on in. Is this another pit stop? And perhaps something went wrong on the first pit stop. We'll have to wait and see. We'll get confirmation of that shortly, as meanwhile, we look to Brandon Hay going from one goal driver to another, who will now look at this and think that it's all to play for as he makes his way on around. Well, Tilling's into his pit box again, so whatever happened on that first stop, it did not work out correctly, and he's been serviced once more. But it's 2 stops for Tilling, and it's not gone right at all today, as meanwhile Brandon Hay here charging on down towards what is turn number 11 right now, and trying to fly as high as he can as he makes his way into the right left here of 11 and 12. As he makes his way on down through the right left, we can see it tucking in behind Chris Edisford here, and Hay has not got too much pressure from his class at the moment, although he will be aware of the fact that Alex Hill, having gone for that huge attempt at an undercut, pitting only 10 minutes in, given the fact he was stuck behind the driver who's actually harassing the rear of Brandon Hay, and Mark Collicott, who you see here, P9 overall, P3 in the silver class. Alex Hill went for a very early pit stop, and then will that enable him to jump right up into the mid of Brandon Hay, of Joshua Pratt? That's the big concern that all of our gold class drivers will have. And in terms of the progress being made by Alex Hill so far, well, as we see him here making his way through turns 11 and 12, his last laps have not been indicative of pace we perhaps expect if he's trying to go for the huge jump on his gold peers, given the fact his last lap of 23.79 as he comes to the end of this lap makes his way through. As we hear Mark Johnson's into the pit lane for his scheduled stop. Well, Hill comes across the timeline, and that lap is going to be, what is there, a 23.41. He's not matching the pace of Pratt and Hay right now. If anything, they are continuing to increment an advantage, as Hay at 23.3, Pratt at 22.8. So I think Hill right now has got to push a little bit more, or perhaps he's finding the limits here with that tyre degradation, those tyre temperatures really soaring high. We'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, we look from P19 driver of Hill to P2 driver Austin William Campbell as he makes his way down across the timeline, and as he makes his way down towards turn number 1 here, James Acklam close behind and following him down. Acklam has dropped back a little bit since we last saw the two, as we see Mark Johnson there coming out to the pit lane, and as they make the way on around through the right hand, we're hearing that Damien Lobbett has just found his way past Brandon Hay. In fact, Brandon Hay is into the pit lane, so is Mark Collicott, so that explains why we're seeing some transitions in position. Meanwhile, Casper Brotner's had an off track somewhere from what we're hearing, but the point we were going to make is that James Acklam right now falling back a little bit from Austin William Campbell, but I think trying to do some fuel saving here and get the jump in the pits. But it is starting to become pit stop season here at the 25th minute. We've got Hay, Collicott and Falconer into the pits, and I think we may have some more as well. We do also have Brotner coming in after his off track earlier on, but where's Mark Collicott? Here he is, he's making his way out of the pit lane. Where is Alex Hill by comparison? Because Hill was trying to jump Collicott, and there is Hill making his way down the start finish straight here, and as they head in towards turn number 1, I think Collicott has jumped him here as we look to the blimp camera, and as he comes out of the pit lane, where's Hill by comparison? There's Hill. Hill's looked over, but look at this. Hill's jumped ahead of Brandon Hay, and Hill's made a critical gain here in the fact that Hay was ahead, and now Hill comes out ahead of him as they make the way into turn number 3, and this is a surprise. And right now I would not be surprised if Ryan Moles and Pratt are looking at this and thinking I need to pit sooner rather than later, because Alex Hill is onto something, and he's onto something smart as they make the way on down through turns 4, 5 and 6. Casper Brotner's had an off track. In fact, I think there may have been an incident for Casper Brotner. We'll find out about that very shortly, but we've also gone to the pits James Acklam, so I think he's now going for the aforementioned undercut that we talked about earlier, as Hill right now really gaining ground as he comes through the chicane and up towards turn number 10. But as he comes out of McDonald's corner here, heading down the back straight, will he be able to make the move, stick in terms of staying ahead of Hay, or will Hay find a way on back? We can see, meanwhile here, Mark Collicott find his way past Jeremy Grandin, making the move down the back straight and gain another position. With Grand, to be fair, yet to take a pit stop. I think he's decided just may as well let Collicott go, because there's no value in fighting a driver who's already pitted when you haven't pitted. And as they come through the right hander of turn number 14 right now, well, it is all happening. We've still got plenty more pit stops to come. And speaking of things happening, this is Daniel Payne right now under pressure from James Acklam. Payne is yet to pit. He's your bronze leader, as Acklam meanwhile finding a huge amount of traffic. And Payne here, he's got Brown battling with him. Brown is yet to stop. He's a gold driver here, and Payne, I think, is going for overall points as well, as a bronze win today as they make the way down through 6 and 7. Sharples is also still there, and Sharples is not being shaken off, and this is one of the strongest performances we have seen from Darren Sharples this season. He just looks so happy in that Mercedes around here, and whilst he's not been able to get close enough to Pit Days to the post, at the same time it could be one of those days whereby he may right now have saved enough fuel to get closer coming out of the pits, and could he get the jump there, because Payne right now is really having to deal with a situation whereby he's having to try and negotiate drivers in another class coming on past him, or trying to find the way on past him, much like Mark Johnson earlier was trying to find his way past a good number of drivers both in his own class and also other classes. And speaking of that, we can see here as Mark Johnson moves up to P19, Brotner there on the inside and not having a good run out of turn number 3, and I think letting Johnson go as they make the way through the long left-hander behind them, and all good as be Casper Brotner there, almost losing the car coming out of turn 6 into 7. I think that car may have some damage to it. There might be a problem with one of the tyres, because right now that BMW is not looking composed, but right now trying to maintain his composure as much as possible and having to let Nathan Foster go on through, because of course Nathan Foster P3 overall, and therefore lapping at Brotner as they make the way down the back straight. But as they come on down towards turns 11 and 12 once again, we are still expecting a good number of pit stops. Our top 9 have yet to pit. James Acklam is the first driver in the order who has pitted. And meanwhile, Brandon Hay here has found his way past Alex Hill. Hill going a bit slowly in the rear of the picture. What happened? This was only moments to go, and Hill a mile away from Hay, but as he went into turn number 1, missed his braking point, and the car's just slipped away from him, and as he brought it back, to be fair, not sending the car around, keeping it pointed in the right direction, but Hill there with a rare error, getting it wrong and losing the place to Brandon Hay. And I think Brandon Hay at this point will be thinking, right, I've been given a lucky break, given what happened in terms of coming out of the pits, and he had Hill right there in front of him, and I don't think anybody expected that, including Brandon Hay himself. But meanwhile, as he makes his way through the chicane and through McDonald's corner, we look to Darren Sharples here, who once again has clear sight of Daniel Payne as they make the way out of turn 14 and down the start finish straight they go. But in the long charge they roll, and as they do, not long to go before these two do have to pit at some point. We normally do see the very latest pit stops in these sprint races, because of course there is a mandatory stop. It's a splash and dash for fuel. Our drivers normally try to go as late as possible, and when they do, they'll go around the 33 to 35 minute mark. We've never seen anyone go beyond that, and I think that's absolutely pushing the fuel tank all the distance, with fuel saving, with lift and coast, everything you can imagine. And as Darren Sharples here continues to look at pace, I do wonder whether there's going to be a potential switch in the pits, whether Hayes has had to push the car too hard and use a lot more fuel compared to Sharples, because Sharples by comparison, he's not been necessarily on the pace of his rival over the course of each individual lap. He's never been shaken off. He's always been ever present, and as they make the way through 7, 8 and 9 right now, whoever comes out on top, they really do deserve it here today, but at the same time, who will it be? That's the big change. As meanwhile into the pits here, driver who has felt as though he's been on top so far, Stephen Masters here, comes into the pits from P5 at the time. The silver class leader makes his way on, and Chris Edisford meanwhile carries on down the start finish straight here. Yet to pit as Chris Edisford, but I think he's trying to hold on for the overcut and go for track position all the way to the end. As meanwhile, Mark Johnson now, turn number 3, has got it wrong. He gets off the circuit, however, and rejoins on the exit of 3 on the inside. I believe that's turn number 3, and as he makes way back up to speed, yes it is indeed, but behind him there you do have Lobbit and Tilling. Lobbit a lap ahead of Tilling, with Tilling having to make that second pit stop. But speaking of pit stops, Daniel Payne into the pits. Sharple stays on out, so now Darren Sharples needs to put in qualifying laps for the next lap or two until he comes on in. He's got to push hard, he's got to push fast. And can Daniel Payne come out in traffic, or will he come out in clear air? Well, as we see Sharples make his way out of turn 3, we look back to Daniel Payne here coming on through. We've just had Patrick Falconer gone past. The next driver making their way down the start finish straight is Stuart Brown, and Brown's a long way away. I think Payne is safe here. I think Daniel Payne has nailed this pit stop as he makes his way on out. He will come out in clear air. It's going to be close. In fact, Brown coming on through here, and Brown coming through like a missile into turn number 2, but not close enough there to intervene. And as they make the way up to speed now, Payne has got clear air, and I expect a reaction from Sharples within the next lap. But meanwhile, Nathan Foster continues to stay out, whereas everybody else in this class has pitted, and Nathan Foster is your leader at the moment, subject to a pit stop. And Jonathan Hitchen re-emerges from the pits after a 6-second advantage when he came into the pits, if not more. So I think, in fact, it was more than that. He stays back into the lead as he makes his way through turn number 2. Well, this is, we predict the lead, subject to him not making a mistake, or Nathan Foster not putting a blinder on everyone. But right now, the Symphony Esports white driver in control of this race. As meanwhile, Chris Edisford goes even longer. I think he's following Foster's strategy. He might be thinking, whatever Foster can do, I can do it too, as he makes his way out of 3 and down towards 4. But as he charges into the triple left-hander here, right now Chris Edisford looking comfortable. But have we had any shake-ups? Well, Austin William Campbell has come well out ahead of James Ackland by comparison, and right now Campbell looking comfortable there in what we suspect will be P2 effective in the Platinum class when all is said and done. But Chris Edison staying out there as well. I don't think Austin William Campbell's going to be caught up behind the silver driver. Meanwhile, Colin Patterson has just come out the pits behind Brandon Hay, literally just as they make the way out of 1, 2 and in towards 3. And well, for Brandon Hay, that's not going to perplex him too much. For Patterson, however, that may frustrate him, because he's now got Jeremy Garand behind him, albeit I think he may be aware of the fact that Jeremy Garand's yet to pit stop. And meanwhile, Daniel Payne, what on earth's happened here to the bronze driver? He's gone off, and that's at turn, I think that's at turn number 2, and he's going all the way around the houses to turn the car around. But what exactly happened? Well, making his way down into turns 1 and 2, into the right-hander he went. Oh, good, and Sharples came out ahead of him there. Oh, that may have just upset Payne a little bit in terms of as he came through to the corner. Evasive action taken there by Stuart Brown in the Mercedes, but that was an absolute surprise to be sure for Payne, I think for all of us, in terms of Sharples coming out ahead by the smallest of margins, and I think that may have just upset Payne's rhythm slightly as he broke into turn number 2. But Darren Sharples now, as you see him on screen with the live pictures here, is your leader in the bronze class in the 777 car with only 6 minutes to go, and an advantage of what is over 10 seconds to be precise, 15 seconds over Daniel Payne here. And all he's got to do is bring this to the line now and make sure he's got enough fuel to get it there as he makes his way through turn number 14. But Sharples nailing that pit stop, and we mentioned he may have been having a slower pit, a faster pit stop and a bit of slower pace in order to guarantee himself a shorter pit stop to try and jump ahead of Payne, and that was picked up on the camera then when we saw what happened to Payne. And now as he makes his way through turn number 2 here, Sharples has really nailed this race down, and I don't think, bar a fault now, anything can upset his momentum. Meanwhile, looking to Brandon Hay here, we can see that Hay has fallen behind Alex Hill, and as they make the way through turn number 7 and coming out and up towards turns 8 and 9, well, I think Brandon Hay may have actually been involved in a little bit of an incident, given the fact that Hill had had the incident earlier on. In fact, there was an off track for Brandon Hay, and here it is. this was a couple of laps ago, and much like Hill getting it wrong into turn number 2, Brandon Hay just outbraking himself very slightly into the corner, and then to rejoin, and Hill came across there. Well, that was very unfortunate for the privateer, but at the same time, it's not too far off of Hill, so we could expect a bit of battle between the two of them down towards the finish. Although I say that, I think Hill is actually creeping that gap over. He's almost got it to 2 seconds now. And as Hay makes his way out to turn number 14, it may all be said and done unless he can find a bit of speed. As behind him, Ryan Moles here, the BWT Motorsport driver. Well, for Brandon Hay right now holding on to P3 in the gold class, and Ryan Moles will be looking at him and thinking, I want that P3 off of you, as they make the way into turn number 2, coming on through the corner. And meanwhile, whilst all this is going on, we've also got more coming. In fact, Damien Lovitch just picked his way past Stephen Masters for P6 overall. That's not a class change in the fact that Masters is silver, Lovitch is platinum, but it's an overall position change. In terms of other position changes we've had, Crouchy Falcon has moved ahead of Jeremy Garand for what is at the time, we're just trying to get an update on that position, and I believe it was for P14, but we focus on the here and now. And as we do, 4 minutes still to go, we can see that Ryan Moles all over the back of Patterson, but his bigger target is Brandon Hay, who's ahead of them as they make the way through 8 and 9 here and come on towards turn number 10. But through the right hand they go, and we ride on board the gearbox here of the third place driver in the gold class in the Mercedes, as number 96 car Brandon Hay charges down the back straight towards turn number 11. As he comes through the flying right left here, you can see Brandon Hay really having to work the car as hard as possible as he comes on through. He knows the pressure's on here. He's got to keep Patterson behind him to give himself a buffer to Moles. If Moles is able to pick his way past Patterson, he will really push that momentum and try and make the move on Hay, and Hay suspects it. He knows it, and that's why he cannot afford to let Patterson even get a sniff of a potential move. And as they charge their way down the start finish straight down towards turn number 1, you can see the trio of drivers here all line astern as they come on through, and Moles right now needs the double toe on the straights. So Audi not fast on the straights compared to its peers, but where it makes up for it by the plenty is in the corners. And as they come out of turn number 2, they stay as they are. As they make the way down towards turn number 3 here, you can imagine if one of them makes a mistake, the others will capitalise on it immediately. This is the closest battle on circuit right now, an effective battle for position. As we can see here, Moles takes a sneak peek and Patterson can't find it. But a quick mention to P4 overall runner of Joshua Pratt, who has got Acklam close behind him, and Pratt, having made his pit stop, firmly ahead of his gold peers. The next gold driver is Alex Hill down in P10. Pratt absolutely flying here as he makes his way into turn number 13. James Acklam behind. It won't be an overall podium today for Pratt, but it's definitely going to be a top 5 either way this battle goes, with only about 2 or 3 more laps on the clock, depending on how quickly Hitchen comes on through before the checker flag arrives. Because they make the way down the start finish straight here, definitely one to be proud of for Pratt today as he heads on down towards turn 1 and 2. But meanwhile, a bit further back, a driver who's trying to recover after a difficult start, Mark Johnson here, now into P18, P3 in the bronze class, and well, he's looking at Casper Rotner, the next bronze driver. Not quite in picture at the moment is Daniel Pace, who is 2.5 seconds up the road from this pair. We see Rotner there pulling over to the right, I think, deciding to let Johnson go, or is he letting him go? I think he is. Indeed, he tucks back in there, so I think Casper Rotner decided not to fight and focus on just finishing P5 in the silver class. But Mark Johnson now has 2.2 seconds to close down to Daniel Pace, who you see here, and there's Mark Johnson in the rear of your picture. That gives you an idea of the gap, and Pace right now on that last lap of 124.3 as he comes to the end of this lap. What's it going to be for him as the white flag is waving? So the next time our leader comes on around, in fact our leader's not too far behind this group, you can see Jonathan Hitchen in the rear of the picture. We will be seeing the checker flag. Pace right now on that last lap of 24.2, Johnson at 22.7. Well, let's put it this way, if Hitchen does not find a way past Johnson on this final lap that he turns, Johnson will have this lap plus 1 more lap in order to try and make the move for P2 in the bronze class. Now I think what Pace will be hoping for here, if he's aware of it, that Hitchen comes past Johnson to lap Johnson and make sure he can't go 1 extra lap after this one. Johnson meanwhile I think will be praying and muttering under his breath, Hitchen, just let me do this lap, do not lap me. And I wouldn't be surprised if Johnson tries to just get the car a little bit wider, get the elbows out slightly if Hitchen tries to think about coming on through, to say to him, look, do not pass me, I've got a battle on my hands. But we'll have to wait to see what happens. But as they make the way through 8 to 9 into 10, we can see that the driver's making the way through turn 10 and the gap is closing. A whole second has already almost been ripped out of Pace's advantage as they come on down towards turn number 11 here, and as they make the way on through the chicane, we focus on Hitchen here, who after putting in an absolutely brilliant pole lap, starting from the front, and an absolutely nailed on start as well, open up the gap to the field in the run to turn number 1, and as he comes through the final corner here, he's been faultless all race day, and he comes to the line, the checker flag awaits him, it's Jonathan Hitchen from Symphony Esports White, who is your winner in round number 7 overall and in the Platinum class by an advantage of 14 seconds or so over Austin William Campbell, who comes out of the final corner here to take what will be P2 overall and in the Platinum class. Shortly after him, it will then be Nathan Foster, who comes on through to deliver a brilliant result. Another podium for the SimRacing driver where he wants to be, and then after him it will be your gold winner of Joshua Pratt, the privateer, P4 overall, ahead of James Ackland P5, Damien Lovett P6, and then Stephen Masters makes it 2 silver wins out of 2 back-to-back as he crosses the line there, P7. Mark Collicott not too far behind in an absolutely dogged and determined drive. P8 second place in the silver class ahead of Chris Eddersford, P9 there completing the silver podium. Alex Hill will come on through just ahead of Brandon Hay to take the final place inside the overall top 10. P2 gold, P3 gold to Brandon Hay, P11 overall. Colin Patterson P12, Ryan Moles P13, Patrick Falconer P14, and then here comes Darren Sharples, who as he makes his way out of the final corner, I don't think he expected it, but he's your bronze winner in the 777 machine as he crossed the line, P15 overall. And what about Page versus Johnson? Will they come into the final corner? And as Page makes his way on through, he goes a bit deep. It's a drag race to the line, and I think that BMW's got it as he makes his way across line. Page comes home P2 bronze class, P16 overall. Mark Johnson there completes the bronze podium, P17, and they're the last of your finishers on the lead lap. My goodness, so what a brilliant race from all of our drivers, and well, I think all of them right now will be absolutely exhausted after delivering lap after lap here at the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben circuit, and it's our first visit to the circuit in the GT3 League hosted by UKSimRacing. But what a fantastic race, and with that in mind, our drivers doing their cool down laps, so jump into the pits. The results are in. Let's bring you the race results subject to any steward's inquiries. Starting off then with our overall results of round number 7 of the UKSimRacing GT3 League Season 8. We can see Jonathan Hitchen taking the win in the end by 14.5 seconds over Austin William Campbell P2, and then Nathan Foster completing the overall podium. An all-platinum overall podium today with Joshua Pratt, the gold winner P4, James Ackland P5, Damien Lovett P6, and then we have the silver trio of Stephen Masters, Mark Collicott and Chris Eddersford, all with absolutely brilliant drives there, P7 through to P9, and then Alex Hill completing at the top 10 overall. Best of the rest in P11, Brandon Hay there. But as we now come on to the individual classes, starting with the Platinum class, we can see firstly that confirmation of Hitchen taking the win by an absolutely staggering margin over Austin William Campbell. And Austin William Campbell really picking up the pieces where it went wrong for the likes of Acklam and Lobbit into turns 1 and 2, and then just driving an absolutely brilliant race from that point onwards to be P2 ahead of Nathan Foster P3, James Acklam P4 and Damien Lobbit P5. Unfortunately, the two of them came together into turns 1 and 2, but still I think they'll look at it after the race and move on from it. There's no doubt about that. But as we then come on to the gold class here, we can see in a very good run from Joshua Pratt, he took the win in the end by 23.5 seconds over Alex Hill. And I think Hill will be thinking to himself today, what could have been if it weren't for a couple of mistakes in hunting down Pratt. And the same for Brandon Hay as well in terms of finishing P2, but in the end P3 for the privateer, if it weren't for that mistake at turn 2, repeating what happened to Alex Hill only a few laps before, and it could have been the other way round for the pair of them. But still a good drive from Brandon Hay, and I think he'll move forward to the next round full of confidence. Ryan Moles P4 there, having to recover to P4 after that contact. We believe it was contact. It's a bit difficult to tell whether it was netcode or actual contact between himself and Mark Johnson into the triple left on the start of the race. But still P4 for him ahead of Patrick Falconer P5. The two Audis there, BWT Motorsports Audi ahead of the DCW Racing Audi, and then Martin Tilling and Stuart Brown finishing a lap down P6, P7. A difficult day for the pair. And then we come on to the silver class, and we can see here in our silver class, our winner, Stephen Masters, by a margin of 8.2 seconds. But second place there, and not to be forgotten about, Mark Collicott today. absolutely on fire. And I think if he'd had a bit of a stronger qualifying session, could he have potentially taken the fight to Masters, given how much he was pushing and how that pace was coming on through? It's a what-if question, but still, I think Masters will be looking in his rearview mirror and thinking that Collicott could be a threat. And Chris Edison there, P3, still a solid drive, not quite finishing where he qualified in class, but I think he'll take that podium and move forward to the next round. Colin Patterson, P4, a good drive from him, and Casper Brotner and Jeremy Cran just not having a happy day at the races here, finishing the lap down P5, P6. And as we come on to the bronze class, we can see, last but not least, taking the win today, Darren Sharples by 15.1 seconds over Daniel Pay's P2, who just held off Mark Johnson to the line by 0.4 of a second when it was all said and done, but so close between the two of them. Mark Johnson, I think he'll feel frustrated given what happened on the opening lap and the pace he had, but still he battled back to P3 ahead of Reggie Greenfield, Sean Clark and James Conley, who came home 2 laps down from their peers, P4, P5, P6 respectively. But those are the race results, ladies and gentlemen, and very shortly we will be conducting our post-round interview with our selected drivers. It'll be a mixture of drivers. We're not just going to go with our winners, so we'll have to wait and see who exactly will join us in the interview room. But what a race, and we just need a breather. Our drivers need a breather, but post-race interviews coming up very shortly. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we are good to go with our post-round interviews with our selected drivers. And on today's agenda, we have 3 gold drivers and also a platinum class driver. And we have drivers of mixed fortunes today. And one driver in particular of mixed fortunes who started off with a difficult qualifying session but bounced back after a difficult start to his race was Ryan Moles from BWT Motorsport. And as we do bring Ryan Moles into the interview room, Ryan, a difficult day today at the Oschersleben circuit, but you managed to find a way to recover and push hard in the BWT Motorsport Audi. If you had to reflect and summarise your day today at the German circuit, what would you say it's been like?
I've got to say it was an eventful one for sure. Like you say, I struggled a bit with qualifying, especially. Wasn't the place where I wanted to start from, but I think at the end of the day, I had a pretty decent recovery drive, and yeah, I'm quite happy with the end result.
Well, indeed, quite happy in the end and recovering to P4 in the class, P13 overall, but just taking a big step back to qualifying. You're saying not quite happy with the qualifying session, and you did qualify in P14 overall, P5 in class. Do you just find it so you couldn't quite hook up the lap, or was there a bit more to it than that?
I think it was just the slight off tracks that caught me out in a few corners on my push laps, and then I think for the final lap I just need to play it safe, and yeah, so it was just not where I wanted to be. I was expecting a top 10, ideally closer to some of the golds up front, but yeah, we take what we get.
Indeed, and then taking that into the race itself, of course, we got underway, charged down towards turns 1 and 2, all looked safe and well, everyone negotiated their way on through, but then coming up towards turn number 4, a little bit of a moment between yourself and what was Mark Johnson. Just take us through what happened from your perspective, because it looked a very close moment.
Yeah, so there was a car that went off circuit out of turn 3, I believe. So that kind of just concertinaed us both closer together. So, and then I think Mike just had a little dab of the brakes, and that really caught me out because I've just been lifting there. I probably should have expected it, but yeah, I just ran into the back of him slightly, and we both spun. So again, I really do apologize to Mike because that was it was a good qualifying from him as well, and yeah, it's a shame that had to happen.
But still, after what happened, you rejoined the circuit and went to work in terms of regaining places. And I must admit, at one point, you were absolutely flying in the Audi R8. I have to ask, with the incident that occurred, did it all sort of galvanise you and make you think, right, head down, we're just going to go for this now? Because you were flying.
Yeah, absolutely that. I mean, I was very frustrated with myself to begin with, but then I felt like you say, I just brushed it off and I got my head down, and I was really getting into a nice rhythm. I think towards the end, I was catching, I can't remember, Xander and Brandon, was it in front? And yeah, I thought I was just begging for like 5 more minutes because I really wanted to like gain on them.
Oh, indeed. And in pushing as hard as you did, I have to ask, did you change your strategy at all over the course of the race? Because we did see over the course of distance, of course, many drivers go for an undercut, some for the overcut and some in between. Or did you stick to the strategy you always had in mind?
I just stuck to just going long as I could, just come in when the fuel was out, and then just come out and just push as hard as I could, same as the first stint.
Or indeed, in pushing that way, I have to ask, we heard about tyre degradation being so tricky around here and the track temperatures being quite high, and the Audi's normally very sensitive to its rear tyre temperatures. Did you experience that at all? Did the car just really feel nice and composed with regards to its temperatures?
The car felt great, honestly. Even later on, it just felt like it was sticking every time I was pushing it through corners. So I could have done another half an hour on them tires. It felt good.
Oh, indeed, that's absolutely brilliant to hear. And with a bold claim like that, I have to ask, are you feeling bold for the Circuit of the Americas in a week's time?
Oh, I'm not too sure about that one. It's a track that I don't own, but I don't know. I'll have a good think about it, and yeah, we'll see.
Well, we do look forward to seeing you take to the circuit in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Ryan, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to on the broadcast tonight?
I think it's got to be to the other BWT drivers that couldn't make it tonight, Sam and Daniel. I think they were busy watching the Formula One. So, yeah, I hope you guys have a good one. And hopefully they return next week as well.
Well, I'm sure they'll appreciate that, Ryan. But with that, whilst it wasn't the result you wanted today, congratulations all the same on the 4th place finish in class in the end. And we look forward to seeing you out of the circuit in Texas in a week's time.
Nice one. Cheers, Paul.
All the best. So hearing there from our first interview of the evening, Ryan Moles, and him himself digging in terms of that self-reflection and saying openly that we apologise firstly for the contact with Mark Johnson. Indeed, one of those tricky situations, and saying about the concertina effect that was triggered by, I think it was a Mercedes that went straight, slightly wide coming out of turn number 3, and it kicked off the chain reaction, but still getting his head down and pushing on strong and not changing his strategy. They're just going all in and delivering and bringing it home in P4, and we'll have to wait to see where he's able to make the car feel as comfortable at the Circuit of the Americas. Another circuit that actually quite similar in its first half compared to what we've seen today, and I suspect the BWT Audi is going to be flying in Moles Capable's hands. But as we now come on to our second interview of the evening, it is none other than Nathan Foster, who we do prepare to bring him into the interview room. And as we do just let him know that we're about to interview him, the Platinum driver having a good performance today and picking up where others lost out, much like Austin William Campbell did as well. But as he does now join us in the interview room, Nathan, a good day today, perhaps not the way you expected it to come to you in the SimRacing team, but a P3 overall and a P3 in the Platinum class as well. Good points in the bag?
Yeah, it was a good result, I think. I wasn't really expecting too much today. I didn't have much seat time practicing, but just took the race as it came and made the most of it, I think.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of making the most of it, we saw in qualifying a good qualifying lap for yourself, putting yourself P5 in class and on the grid. Was that about where you thought you deserved to be in the end, or did you think there was a bit more out there?
No, I think that's probably where I was. I didn't have the pace to challenge for the top few places, but yeah, I think, like I say, I made the most of it.
Now, before we come on to what happened at turn 2 and led to a bit of a mix-up in the Platinum class, what was your goal at the start of the race? Was it just to get a solid start and just see if you could pick up some places and run it clean, or were you thinking I might be able to have 1 or 2 people into the opening corners?
I was mainly trying to keep it clean, I think. My main aim was, I think it's tough to overtake around here, so anything I was going to get done was through strategy. So I wanted to stick with them and try and save a bit of fuel and see where that got me.
And then when we saw the incident that occurred at turns 1 and 2, where we saw Acklam come into contact with the back of Lobbit through the corner, did that suddenly make you think, actually, hold on, there's a podium in place here?
Yeah, it's always mixed emotions when you see that happen, because obviously when it's you're not best pleased, but it's an opportunity for everyone else behind, so got to make the most of it.
Indeed, and as you started to make the most of it, I have to ask, with regards to the strategy today, we saw quite a straightforward strategy from yourself, not really getting into too many battles compared to the peers around. Did you stay to the same strategy, or did you make any tweaks to it as the time went on?
No, same strategy all the way through. I was in fuel saving mode fairly early on, just trying to stick with the front view and hopefully trying to overcut, but managed to secure P3 with it, so can't be too disappointed.
Well, Dean, if you don't mind me asking a cheeky question, obviously you're one of these drivers who really does enjoy fuel saving. I mean, you went the longest of everybody on your opening stint, and we've seen that so many times this season. Just how do you do it? You just look so comfortable. It's almost as if you could get to the end of the race on that fuel tank, whereas everybody else would be gasping for fuel.
Not quite sure how it happens, but it tends to, seems to come naturally to me.
Oh, indeed. Well, with that in mind, will it come naturally to yourself at the Circuit of the Americas in a week's time? How are you feeling for the Texan circuit?
Yeah, hoping for a stronger second half to the season, to be honest. A few more tracks that suit me, and looking forward to getting into it.
Well, I'm liking the sound of the positive spirit there, Nathan. And just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to on the broadcast this evening?
Shout out to anyone that's watching or supporting from SimRacing. So yeah, thanks to those guys for letting me race with them this season.
I'm sure your teammates will appreciate that. But with that, Nathan, congratulations on your overall and Platinum class podium today. And we do look forward to seeing you out of the circuit in a week's time.
Cheers, Paul.
All the best. So hearing there from Nathan Foster, very happy with his performance today and picking up where others left off at the start of the race and just running a very straightforward strategy from start to finish and going long as well. And indeed, they're not giving away any secrets other than not quite sure how he does it, but he finds a way to do it. And it's absolutely brilliant to see him be able to pull off those performances. And you have to wonder, If he continues to do it like that, could we one day see that overcut jump him all the way up into the lead of the Platinum class in a race? Well, that'll be one question that we'll have to wait and find out as the journey goes on. But as we now get ready to make our way to our next interviewee, it's none other than Martin Tillin, who we did briefly hear from early on in the qualifying session. And I think after what was a great qualifying session, it didn't quite go right for Tilling. And well, it was a pit stop or two in the end, which cost him dearly. And as he now joins us in the interview room, Martin, we talked to you before the race got underway. A very strong qualifying session. Put yourself P5 overall, P1 in class. Didn't quite go the way you wanted it to in the race. I hate to ask this, but not a happy day at Oschersleben?
I got to take it on the chin. I mean, I'm here in every race, so there are drop weeks to have. I mean, it's the only real positive I could say. It was my own rookie mistake on the pit exit, and I got black flagged for a stop and go. So it's like you got to take it on the chin. I got drop weeks available, so it just falls into that category. But I had huge potential here in one of my favorite tracks I've driven this season. So it's just a bit gutting, but you got to take it on the chin and move on.
Oh, indeed. And that's the right spirit to have in there. I think many tuning in will agree with you there. And speaking about the positives of tonight, so of course, qualifying well, the lap put you right up there on the third row. What was the aim of the game in the run to turns 1 and 2? Because we, of course, saw a bit of contact in the Platinum class ahead. Were you thinking about you could have a go at some of the Platinum drivers ahead of you, or were you more focused on just playing it smart and keeping the car close by?
I mean, I wanted to stay in the mix. I didn't want to push and cause an incident. That's my main thing. So I sort of let all of them bunch up together, and then I think there was an incident. I had the inside line. I had a free track because I had no one really behind me because of the early jump that Johnny had on the start, which I think we all saw coming. Some of us behind, and yeah, it was interesting. I just had to stay in the mix and just take advantage and try not to kill anyone. And instead, I ruined my own race in the end. So it was strong. I felt I could have done better.
Oh, indeed. And running out there as you did, we won't talk too much about the pit stop and whatnot because it is what it is. But at the same time, just take us through in the BMW M4 at a circuit which is full of direction changes. And we know the M4 is quite a bulky car in terms of its nature and it's shifting its weight around. How do you work around that transition? Because you make those chicanes look as though the car's mid-engine rear-wheel drive.
It's extremely pointy car. It's I hear a lot of people saying it's too easy to drive sometimes, and I just feel that the car is strong in direction changes, but at a cost. As we saw my tire drop off when Josh was catching me, for example, like he was behind by a few seconds, and then I sort of let off a little bit to try and save me tires. Yeah, and then Josh was pushing in the Porsche. And in the end, when I tried to push again, my tyres just had nothing left. So that's why I let Josh go and I just sort of dived in and decided the early pit, but it didn't work out. So
Indeed, it was a brilliant moment where we saw the two of you dicing through the turn 11-12 chicane and you're doing the little sneaky cut back into the pit. And in terms of making that reaction, were you expecting that by doing so, if it weren't for the wayward pit stop and the subsequent penalty, that you'd been able to have undercut him, given we saw Alex Hill go for a very early undercut as well at 12 minutes into the race?
well, I had tested several strategies during officials this week, and this was one of them, and it did pay off when I tried it. It's just a very risky strategy because you've got to be sure that you can either match or be faster than the guy you're trying to jump, be it only one position, maybe two sometimes, but if you fall back in the field by a mistake or an incident or a long pit stop, or you forget your tires and you get new tires, then you got to try and work that back, and you got to be sure that you can put in those lap times and sector times to be able to match what they're doing or be better. Otherwise, the undercut just simply won't work.
Oh, indeed. And in thinking about that, and of course, strategy being so key in a good number of these races, thinking about your championship strategy at the moment, going into tonight, you were, of course, in the top 3, battling for that lead of the championship. P2, if I remember correctly. And now, coming out of tonight, the provisional points have just come on in, and we do believe that you've dropped to P3, albeit not too much off of Hill and Pratt. What's your goal going into this latter half of the championships? We know you've got the pace there to be right up the top alongside Pratt and Hill, but we've also seen you've played it very smart over the first half, keeping the points where you need to, getting the wins where you need to. Are we going to see more of that over the course of the remainder of the season?
Yeah, I think it's more about maintaining your momentum and trying not to take too many negatives for a race. Keeping it on track. Try and be incident free and keep it clean. And it's going to be a very tricky second half to the season. But I think that the pace is in the car. I just got to hope that my ability around certain tracks that I'm not so familiar with, like Kota. I'm not great at Kota, I must admit. So it could be another bogey track, but it's a very tricky second half to the season, and it's going to be all to play for by the end of it. And I'm hoping that I can be up there with it and push to get what I hoped for at the start of the season, which was to win.
Oh, indeed. And just hearing you mention there that the Circuit of the Americas may be a bit of a bogey track, would you mind just elaborating on that, given that's where we head to next week?
A lot of the guys have, or some of the guys have got triple screens. I got an ultra wide. Some have got small screens. Some are in VR. So, turn one is obviously, as we know from watching the Formula One, which I assume everyone did, and from the cockpit view, it's a very, very tricky apex on one. And in these cars with the hardware that people were going to be using, it's going to be very tricky to get the hang of. And I think getting the hang of it quickly, be it you have like a week to practice, but just trying to getting it right, and getting your maybe you have to adjust your height of your driver to see it, or your field of view out a little bit so you can see the apex. It's a different challenge to every other track that we've done because of the elevation change into that first turn.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time at the Circuit of the Americas. But just before we do let you go, Martin, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to on the broadcast this evening?
Not individually, but just a huge mention to UKSimRacing for taking me on. It's my second season now, and it's been humongous fun. I had a really good season, second half of the season last time out, and started pushing up the battle, shall I say? Because started to find my pace, and the second season's pulled the best out of me, and it's all thanks to these guys. They've stuck with it. They've let me run their flag in terms of their team livery this season. And I'm super pleased for it, and I got to thank everybody in the community for that.
Oh, indeed. I'm sure your peers at UKSimRacing will be very grateful for those kind words. But with that, Martin, whilst it didn't go your way today, nonetheless, congratulations on the result, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the chat. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, all the best.
Have a good evening.
So hearing there from Martin Tillin, and quite reflective on his evening in terms of the strengths in qualifying not quite matching up with regards to the error in the pits in the race, but at the same time I think realising it was a lost opportunity today, losing some significant points, but he's not going to give up given the fact there's a lot of challenging circuits coming up in the second half of this season, and it could go any which way. But indeed, talking about the BMW M4 being a very pointy car and comfortable to drive there and really making the car work, and I think Tillin is going to be ever stronger as we go deeper and deeper into this second half, because the next circuit we go to I think will suit the M4 quite nicely, given how we've seen him bring it to the table and task time and time again. But we now come on to our final interview of this evening, and it is DCW Racing's Patrick Falconer, and as he does join me in the interview room very shortly, we'll get to hear the perspective of another Audi driver who's had quite mixed fortunes today, but still I think has had a fun day at the races as he's made his way around the German circuit of Oschersleben. And as he does join me in the interview room now, well, very shortly, I do believe, although we might be having some slight technical issues with that. Don't seem to be able to drag him in the interview room. So instead of what we're going to do, we are going to go to him. Patrick, as I jump to you in the waiting room, I don't seem to be able to pull you into the interview room, so we're going to come to you instead.
Oh, it's fine.
Mixed fortunes today in terms of not the strongest perhaps qualifying session, but a much stronger race by the looks of things. Would you say that the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben has been kind to you?
In the Audi, no. In the Audi, it's quite tricky, especially going into turn one. As you lift off, it really just wants to step out, and you kind of have to numb the power pretty quickly. And then into turn two, it's you sort of been pushed out wide. So it's a tricky track. It's tricky, very tricky in the Audi, because as soon as you get any bit off the off track, it spits you out in typical Audi style. But no, it's been a pretty tricky one today. But it's just actually gained places just by staying on the track. I think that was the main practice in everything this week, is just staying on the track for a certain amount of time without dying, and then the race would come to itself. But unfortunately, everybody else kind of walked away from me. It was hard to claw my way back.
Oh, indeed, but keeping it on the track was critical, and you gained a couple of positions over the course of distance through the mistakes of others. For example, Tillin with having to make that, what was the stop-and-go penalty of the black flag, and also a couple of your other gold peers making their way off circuit at certain times. But I do have to ask, with the circuit being so narrow, and we saw in particular you trying to battle your way up towards the likes of Ryan Moles towards the end of the race, how tricky is it to overtake you or have that opportunity to get close, given the dirty air coming off the back of a GT3 in front of you?
To overtaking it is a very it's the thing. Every track has overtaking opportunities. It's just depending on you trusting the person in front of you that you're overtaking. Now, obviously, I've had my few scuffs in this league, and I've always put my hand up to it. Opportunistic is always the way, but especially on this track, I would say your main opportunity to brake is in the last sector. Now, I'm not very good with curb names, I had to learn this track. It was as you brake just before the last corner, couple of corners, you got the left or right. If you can actually overtake on there, and I was doing that in some practice sessions. And you're able to gain a good amount of speed off the corner and then straight into that kind of left right section, and then onto the last corner you can overtake there. But like I said, you just got to trust the person that you're overtaking. And I think with the way how unsettled a lot of cars were, it was, I had Lobbit behind me, gaining his way back, and the decision was I could have defended into turn one. But in hindsight, it was better just to let him go past and then follow him through. And hopefully, I was trying to gain back on Patterson, but he just stroke away from me. So yeah, overtaking can be done. It's just dependent on the person that you're overtaking, and you got to fully trust these guys, and it's very tricky. But yeah, opportunity is there. You just got to find it.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of opportunities, of course, with the challenges that you're facing in keeping the car composed on the circuit and also the overtaking, did you perhaps adapt your strategy at all to go for a further undercut or an overcut on any of your peers, or did you stick to your plan from the outset?
Well, I put 50 litres in, knowing that I was going to stop earlier than, say, the traditional VRS kind of pit opportunity. But Mark Collicott, my teammate, we was on comms, and he kind of dived in, hoping to over jump one of his race competitors, as I think it was Edison. I can't remember who it was. But anyway, so he thought it'd be a good idea to pit earlier, try and jump him for the next. And I thought, well, I'll just follow him in. I had a big gap behind me. Patterson was in front. He was kind of getting away. But no, it did kind of go off strategy a little bit. And perhaps if I stuck with it, I probably would have kept my 13th place. But I lost a position. I think I was being a bit too overcautious with fuel as well. So I had about 2 laps left. I could have shrunk that down. So yeah, hindsight, I changed strategy, and hindsight, it didn't work.
Well, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but at the same time, another wonderful thing in the perspective of some, but not others, is the Circuit of the Americas in Texas, which we'll be heading to in a week's time. How do you personally view the circuit?
It's a very good track. It's got a nice flow, especially the middle section. In a Formula One car, I'm guessing it's really good with all the amount of downforce it has. In a GT3 car, it can be a bit understeery. I'm hoping that the Audi might be quite strong through there. One of the key things I picked for the Audi, I did start with the Mercedes, but I jumped to the Audi, was the fact that it's got good cornering and it's got good exit speeds. I didn't want to join the Porsche group. I'm calling for a Red Bull overdevelopment situation. They seem to be striking off. I think I'm going to call the FIA and say, see if Horner can help them out. But anyway, so with the Circuit of the Americas, it's another one I've got to kind of learn. It's not one I've done many times. I've done a few on the ESS with the GTE, but the GT3 is completely different. So I think this week would just be, again, not worrying about lap times, just get a nice flow, keep the Audi on the track, and I think it should be quite good because there's a lot of opportunities to overtake. The Porsche, will be fast as well. I think the Mercedes might struggle on the straights. They've been nerfed in the last update. So I think the Audi might be okay. But the Audi's never been strong on the straights. So yeah, it's a mixed bag for me next week. But it will just be, again, stay on track and avoid the death.
Well, we do look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Patrick, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to on the broadcast this evening?
Oh, absolutely. I got the guys in the DCW chat. We've got Mr. Collycott waiting. We've got the Vicar of Bickley. He's sitting there waiting. Of course, some guys will know. And of course, we've got the usual. We've got Matty. He's being part of our little stable, but more UKSR than anything else. And I see I've got Mr. Simnar. He's a regular in the P Cup. And so, yeah, it's been. And obviously, Mr. Andy Jones sitting there lurking. But yeah, all the DCW guys, we are a bit of an odd bod company, but we like each other, and it's been great racing with them. And of course, big shout out to them, because without the DCW guys, we wouldn't be racing.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant to hear, Patrick, and I'm sure all of your teammates will really appreciate the kind words. But with that, really look forward to seeing you out on the circuit in a week's time. But until then, congratulations on the P5 in class today, and we'll see you in Texas.
Cheers, Paul. Thank you very much.
All the best. So hearing there from our last interviewee of Patrick Falconer, an interesting perspective for himself, and a very interesting contrast between Falconer on the Audi and Moles on the Audi. Two drivers in the gold class and two different teams, where Moles was saying the car felt absolutely alive, whereas the Falconer was saying about the car really feeling difficult to drive and keep composed and planted until he into, say, turn number 2 for the braking zone of turn number 1. And still, Falconer keeping the car on the tarmac and making sure not to make any major errors, and that's what led to him picking up a couple of places over the distance and bringing it home inside the class top 5. And well, we'll have to wait to see if he's able to bring the car to life at the Circuit of the Americas, which he seems confident he will be able to, and take the fight to the field, because indeed right now, as we're going to see shortly, he is technically best dressed in P4 in the gold class, but only by a small margin. But more on that in a brief moment. But with all of our interviews completed, it is now time for us to bring you the updated championship standings, of course subject to any stewarding decisions, and let's bring them up on screen, starting with the overall top 20. So as we can see here, after 7 rounds now in the overall top 20 standings, Jonathan Hitchen continues to lead by a margin that seems to only be extrapolated further each and every lap he turns. 123 points now to 72 points of Joe Zarkos, an advantage of 51 points. And if Hitchen continues at this pace and puts in a couple more wins, the championship crown could almost have one of his hands on it before we do get into the final couple of rounds. But we'll have to wait to see whether anybody can bounce back. Joe Zarkos there in at P3, continuing to deliver, albeit not in attendance today or last time out, and we're hopefully expected to see him back as of next week, using a couple of drop rounds up. And then we have, jumping up into P3, the gold driver of Joshua Pratt, the privateer, on 53 points now, picking up 14 points today, ahead of Daniel Thomas. And well, with a good number of our platinum drivers not in attendance over the last couple of rounds, I think Pratt will be very happy with the fact that he's now into overall top 3, and the question will be, can he stay there, or at least stay within the top 5 come the finish? Daniel Thomas and Callum Regarton not in attendance over the last couple of rounds. We hope to see them back soon and fighting fit and ready to go once again. And then we can see there Stephen Masters, P6, the silver driver, moving gradually up the order on 39 points, only 1 point clear from Alex Hill now in P7, or Xander Hill as he's also known. And the Tiki Sim Sport driver there will be getting close and personal with Masters in the hunt for P6, with Austin William Campbell as well. His great result today, moving him up to P8 there on 39 points. And we can see just behind, in fact, I think that 39 points may be a brief typo, but they're on what is P8, and ahead of Nathan Foster, who in P9 on 37 points. The GT3 driver right now continuing to build up their run of momentum. We heard him in his interview saying about really feeling as though things are now turning around after a difficult start, and he's riding on that crest, that wave of momentum. And can he continue to do so as we go deeper and deeper into the season? Given Damien Lobbett has not had the best run of luck recently, now in P10, and what can he do from that P10 position? Behind him, James Ackland, best of the rest there in P11, and he'll be looking to also pick up some major points as we go deeper and deeper into the season. We then come on to the Platinum class specifically, and we can see Jonathan Hitchen in P1, I should say, get my numbers mixed up there. The Civic Esports White driver, as we said only moments ago, 51 points clear of Joe Zarkos, and really opening up that advantage. And then Nathan Foster in P3, the GT3 driver now ahead of Daniel Thomas, albeit Thomas not in attendance for the last 2 rounds, and we'll have to see whether Thomas is able to bounce back when he does attend, with James Acklam there, P5, and I think ruin what could have been today in terms of points, because he is still 4 points off of Daniel Thomas after 14 points gained today, and not quite able to pick up the result he perhaps wanted after the contact at turns 1 and 2. Carl McGurk there in P6, didn't attend today, and the Mercedes driver there not gaining any points, but still 1 point clear of Callum Regarton, and Austin William Campbell there moving up to P8 ahead of Cy Anthony and Damien Lobbit, who complete the top 10, and then Austin Gretorix there, best the rest in P11 ahead of Richard Jepp, Christian Zaruta, Dominic Roberts, Darren Orkett, who complete the top 15, and then Jacko Taylor, Sam Congreve, Paul Busby, Gareth Higgins, Oliver Fennell, and Max Furtwängler, who complete the Platinum class standings. We then come on to the gold class, and we can see here Joshua Pratt leads now by 10 points over Alex Hill. The gap 114 to 104 points, with Martin Tin a little bit further back on 95 points. It's interesting to see how the odds and opportunities are weighing up between these drivers, and right now you would think that Martin Tin is starting to fall a little bit out of contention, but it has been so close between these three, and it could swing back either which way. But the key thing for Joshua Pratt, he does seem to have now found that momentum that eluded him a little bit earlier on in the season, but again, Hill not quite able to capitalise today compared to how he did at Barcelona Catalunya last week, and Tilling, if it had not been for that second pit stop needing to be made and that stop and go penalty, could Tilling be right up there now instead of Hill in the pursuit of Pratt? The three of them are going to come together, and I do think it's not over yet between the three. As we heard from him only moments ago, Patrick Falconer there in P4 on 47 points. The DCW Racing Audi driver there, only 3 clear of John Eddowes, who did not attend today. The Tiki Supersport tyre driver dropping to P5, with Sam Sherwood in P6, and Ryan Moles, his teammate, closing the gap now to the same number of points, but it's result count back that sees the two split, with Sherwood ahead of Moles. Stuart Brown in P8 ahead of Shane Abbott P9, and then Peter Cox in P10, the UKSimRacing Pink driver, who we hope to see next week, not in attendance today. Indeed, a number of drivers avoiding this round due to Pratt's personal circumstances, Formula 1, and seeing it as an opportunity to use it as a drop round. And then Brandon Hay with a great performance today, the Mercedes driver moving into P11 on 32 points and only 2 points off of the top 10. Chris Hitchen P12 ahead of Ollie Pimley, then Daniel Dan Weaver there, the Ford GT driver, not attending today, with Joel Amos behind him in P15, 6 points between the two. And then it's Joe Newman, Billy Mann, and John Watt who complete the gold standings. And as we come onto the silver class standings, we can see Stephen Masters now leading the way, albeit in the absence of his two major contenders in the form of Whitefoot and Lowerson, and Masters on 97 points, 16 clear of Whitefoot, and respectively 20 clear of David Lowerson. But again, it could go down to the wire as we move into next week, so we are expecting Whitefoot and Lowerson to return. So whilst Masters may be ahead right now, it could swing either which way. Jeff Griffiths there in P4 on 62 points, only ahead of Patterson based on count back, with Patterson of course attending today and picking up a good result, and then Chris Eddersford behind him and not too far behind on 57 points. Patterson versus Eddersford is definitely heating up in the battle for P5, and indeed the battle for P4 when you put Griffiths into the equation. And then you see Tyson Melender there in P7, only 3 points off of Eddersford, with Garanda further 4 points behind, and then Casper Bruckner, despite a difficult day, still holding on to P9. And 2 points clear on Mark Collicott there, who continues to pursue for DCW Racing in the BMW M4, just inside the top 10. Rob Armstrong there in P11 for UKSimRacing Pink, ahead of Murray Luca, with Sean Cranny Swash P13, Ryan Williams P14, Paul Davey P15, and then Matthew Morris, Callan Owens, and Aaron James complete the silver standings. And then we come onto the bronze class Drivers' Championship standings, and we can see here Darren Sharples now leading by 6 points over Daniel Pays. The fortunes continue to swing back and forth, but both drivers have to be aware of the fact that whilst they both have a drop round on their board already, Mark Johnson in P3, despite the difficulties of today, has 2 drop rounds to their 1, and therefore you could argue he still has at least half a race point advantage, if not a whole race point advantage, to use in that 10-point deficit to Sharples, the leader. But Sharples takes the lead, and how will it turn in the next round? James Conley in P4 there on 75 points, breaking away from Reggie Greenfield, who moves up into P5 after a good performance today, with Sean Clark hot on his heels. And then we have Ryan Gonzalez, Richard Baxter, Matty Wild, and Matt Edmondson completing the top 10, with Thomas Barzak, Stephen Cox, James Chapman, Ashley Coverdale, and Andrew Murray completing the bronze standings. And then last but not least, we come onto the Teams Championship standings. And as we can see here, Symphony Esports White lead the way by a margin that has not grown. It has neither decreased. They are still matching the margin they previously had to Tiki Simsport, a margin that stands at 59 points, with both teams picking up 32 points apiece today. UKSimRacing Pink only 5 points further behind that and trying to get into the fight versus Tiki Simsport, with Tiki Simsport Tar falling a little bit further back, but closing some ground versus UKSimRacing Pink. The gap between the two teams, 12 points, and BWT Motorsport as well, matching the points accrued by Tiki Simsport Tar. They stay in P5. DCW Racing get a huge points haul today, moving up to P6 on 116 points, just ahead of UKSimRacing. And then Symphony Esports Black, BRM Racing and SimM Racing complete the top 10, with Symphony Esports Gold only 4 points outside of the top 10 in P11, and Effect Esports in P12. Well, those are all the standings, provisional of course, subject to stewards' inquiries post-race. Those will be dealt with over the next couple of days. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed the broadcast today and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community, then why not check out our official website, which you did see earlier in the show as well when we were talking about our affiliates, and our website is at UKSimRacing.co.uk, and if you go there, it's the heart and source of all information in relation to our series and indeed the organisation that we run as a whole and everything in between. Or if you're not inclined to go to our website, then why not go to our Twitter, which is at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. We can keep up to date with the latest news that's coming on in regarding upcoming series and events as hosted by UK Sim Racing. Also, a big thank you to our affiliates, including Swellia Meta Sim Racing Coaching, the #1 source of coaching on iRacing, if not one of the #1 sources, with Swellia Meta being a series champion in overall and official series on iRacing. Indeed, their YouTube link there. Go to their YouTube channel and you will see exactly why it's one of the premier sim racing coaching services on iRacing, if not the very best. On top of that as well, Race Anywhere, their web address, raceanywhere.co.uk. And a little thing about Race Anywhere is they are the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. We've also got Demon Tweaks there, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, whether it's real-world motorsport or simulated motorsport, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions, and their website, demon-tweaks.com. And then last but not least, Amazon there, the website, amazon.co.uk, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to one-click shopping, Amazon Prime, and the Fire TV Stick. But with that, thank you to our affiliates once again, and now our drivers will be getting their bags packed to make their way from Germany to the United States of America for the Circuit of the Americas. Now, I'm sorry to say that in our next round broadcast, it will be a post-round broadcast brought to you on Tuesday, the 8th of November, 2022. The racing will occur on Sunday, the 6th of November, but we'll be bringing it to you as if it were live 2 days after the fact. But still, as our drivers make their way to the Texan Circuit, who will come out on top in the sweltering heat that's anticipated, and indeed a circuit that keeps everybody on their toes, we'll have to wait and find out. But with that, we have been at UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britta the Spit. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.